Chapter 2530. Miss, this ship's waves are a bit big. Inside the cockpit, Hepburn was controlling the helm, but he seemed to have trouble controlling it. Samantha was also suspicious. How can there be such big waves in this area? Wait, is there going to be a storm? Is there any feedback from the radar? No, and the wind vane is normal. Southeast wind, 12 meters per second. Hepburn's face was full of confusion, but the direction of the waves is really weird. It's completely different from the wind. It was getting harder and harder for Hepburn to control the helm. Just then, the ship shook violently. Unexpectedly, Headley was sent tumbling away. The rudder also began to spin randomly. At the same time, the ship started swaying from side to side. Samantha went up to pull the helm, but he couldn't do so at all. Just then, huge waves rose on both sides of the bow, slapping against the ship. Strangely, the waves weren't slapping in one direction. Instead, they slapped from the left and right sides of the ship. The ship swayed even more violently. Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gisli stood on the second deck. We can't continue. If we do, we'll capsize the ship. Aquilati Gisli was speechless at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao's control of water wasn't weaker than his, but in terms of precision, Chun Zhao's control was much worse. Originally, Aquilati Gisli wanted to compete with Chun Zhao in terms of water control using a gentler method. But Chun Zhao didn't plan to do that at all. The power he used was frighteningly strong. This kind of power was meaningless on the battlefield, but it was used on the research ship. If he didn't try his best to maintain it, the ship would probably be capsized. Chun Zhao also felt that he couldn't continue. He might as well give up on the competition. Chun Zhao could also feel that his control of water couldn't be compared to Aquilati Gisli at all. But in terms of strength, Chun Zhao wouldn't lose to him either. However, Chun Zhao felt that it was a pity that he didn't win the bet. This was because they were betting on people. Aquilati Guthrie had used Vincent as a wager. If Chun Zhao won, he could take her away. If Aquilati Gasly won, Chun Zhao would transfer his contract with Syndicate to Aquilati Gasly. It was actually quite a pity for Aquilati Gasly. He knew more or less about the feud between the Syndicate and Tiger. Now Tiger was killed by Chun Zhao. Xian Zhao was considered one of the best athletes in the boxing world, and even in the sports world. There was no need to mention his commercial value. If he could get Sin to work for him, it would greatly reduce the pressure on his finances. Although Aquilati Gisli's family business was huge, However, it also consumed a lot of money. There are places to spend money, in addition to the previous losses. Some of his investments were also hit by a cold wave. As for Chun Zhao and Vincent, they didn't have any needs. She just wanted to get her hands on him. When Vincent faced Chun Zhao, he was very arrogant. Therefore, Chun Zhao really wanted to teach him a good lesson after he got it, to teach him how to behave. Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gasly were both irresponsible people. They didn't blame themselves or compensate for the trouble they and the crew caused. Miss, there's a ship ahead. It looks like we're in the same line. Huh? In the same line? Samantha's expression changed. Do you know where it came from? The ship is very big and seems to have been modified from a cruise ship. I've never heard of anyone modifying a cruise ship into a pirate ship, Herpali said seriously. Hepali said solemnly, this area should be Guret's territory, but this ship definitely doesn't belong to Guret. At the same time, Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gasly, who were standing on the second deck, also saw the cruise ship. Fuck, isn't that mine? Aquilati Gasly stared at the ship with wide eyes. He stared for a long time and finally confirmed that the ship was his. However, the ship should be in Chun Zhao's hands now. Why would it appear here now? Aquilati Gasly couldn't help but turn to Chun Zhao. Did you call it here? No, I sold it to a friend, Chun Zhao said. When he'd destroyed Aquilati Gasly's marine laboratory, the ship had naturally become his spoils of war. However, the ship was too old. It had probably been built for more than 50 years. Many of the equipment was old beyond recognition. In addition, Chen Zhao had damaged many places. If he wanted to repair it, it would cost at least tens of millions of dollars. If he wanted to change the equipment and design, it would cost a few thousand more. So, Chen Zhao contacted Gurette directly and asked if she wanted it. Gurette was very interested in the ship. After discussing the price, she bought it for $80 million. As a pirate, Gurette needed a disguise. There's nothing better than a cruise ship to disguise yourself. No one could have guessed that the cruise ship was a pirate ship. Plus, the ship was big enough to install some heavy weapons. Chen Zhao watched the ship approach. Just then, the pirates on the ship signaled for the research ship to stop. Chen Zhao saw Gurette on the deck of the ship. Gurette also saw Chen Zhao. She didn't expect Chen Zhao to appear on the research ship. Just then, the ship lowered a ladder. The people on the research ship were all nervous. Gurette had a dominating position in this area. She was completely different from amateurs like Simenta. Gurette was a professional and also the most powerful pirate in this area. She even dared to attack the Coast Guard. She definitely wasn't someone small fries like them could mess with. At this moment, Gurette climbed down alone and jumped directly onto the deck of the research ship. When the crew on the deck saw her, they all backed away. Gurette walked up to Simenta and Hepari. "Isn't this the little girl from the Padley family?" "Hi." Simenta tried not to act impolitely. Gurette patted Simenta's shoulder. "But I'm not here for you." Gurette walked to the second deck in a few steps. "Hi, Chin." Chen Zhao opened his arms and hugged Gurette. "How come you're here?" "I should be asking you that. Why are you on this ship?" Gurette was already very familiar with Chen Zhao, so she didn't beat around the bush. "Another big deal? Why didn't you call me?" She really liked working with Chen Zhao because of his abilities and because he wouldn't use his own power to cheat others. Chen Zhao shook his head. "It's not a deal. I'm just borrowing this ship to send me somewhere. Why not me? It's not a good place. You definitely won't like it." Chapter 2531. It's not treasure hunting? Gurette asked in a low voice. "No." Gurette nodded. Since Chen Zhao didn't say it, it was probably inconvenient. "Do you need my help?" "Hurry up and leave." Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. "Fine." Gurette came calmly and left elegantly. The people on the ship looked at each other. The battle they were most worried about didn't happen. However, it seemed that Chen Zhao and Gurette not only knew each other, but had a close relationship. But now, Chen Zhao had appeared on their ship. This caused them to be somewhat worried. Their original plan was to dump Chen Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley at a nearby port. But now it didn't seem so safe. Samantha thought for a moment and decided to negotiate with Chen Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley. "Mr. Chin, Mr. Aqualotti, can we talk?" In the past 2 days, Chen Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley had been very obedient. They didn't do anything improper. In the beginning, Samantha even deliberately deviated from the route. He wanted to see if they would do anything. In the end, no matter where the ship went, Chen Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley didn't have any objections. It was as if they were really on the ship to feel the wind and waves. But after thinking carefully, they felt that it was impossible. The two of them had connections and were rich and wealthy. Why would they need to freeload her? "Sure, what do we eat for lunch?" Aqualotti Gasley asked. "Are there octopuses in this area?" Chen Zhao asked. "I want to eat braised octopus." Simenta's face darkened. "I'm here to talk business with you two. Isn't this a serious matter?" Hearing this, Simenta was speechless. Although she was angry, she still had a faint smile on her face. She couldn't afford to offend either of them. "Can you two be direct? Why are you on my ship?" "Sightseeing." "To enjoy the waves on the sea." "To enjoy the fun of the sea, a yacht should be more comfortable." "A yacht can't go far," Aqualotti Gasley said matter-of-factly. Cimenta rubbed his forehead. Guys, let's be honest, okay? Well, since we've come to this point, we might as well be frank. Anyway, we'll stay on the ship for a few days. We won't interfere with what you do, and we won't ask if you want to kill us or do scientific research. After a few days, we'll disembark on our own. But for the next few days, you can't chase us off the ship, even if you want to. How many days? Cimenta asked. Not necessarily. It depends on my mood. Cimenta was even more speechless. These two were so stubborn. He couldn't get any information at all. Mr. Chin, Mr. Aquilati, we won't be docking for the rest of the voyage. If you want to disembark, the nearest port is the port of Hawaii. We'll arrive at the port of Hawaii tonight. Once we miss the port of Hawaii, there won't be a chance to disembark again. Don't worry. If you're annoyed by us, just throw us into the sea, and we'll swim back ourselves. You can also give us a small boat. Rowing on the sea seems pretty interesting. Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gisli both looked as if they deserved a beating. Cimenta was a bit annoyed. She watched as Chun Zhao and Aquilati pretended to be stupid, but there was nothing she could do. You're really not afraid that I'll make you go into the sea right now? Wow, you're really going to do that? We were just joking earlier. How far is the coastline from here? Very far. Then what should we do? Cimenta looked at the two before her. They said they were afraid, but their expressions were fake. There was no fear on their faces at all. Instead, their eager eyes made people want to beat them up. Cimenta didn't know what trump cards they had. Were they really not afraid that she would kill them on the ship? Whatever. Suit yourself. Furious, Cimenta turned to leave. She really didn't want to continue discussing with these two asterisk holes. She didn't get any useful information from them in such a short time. Instead, she was infuriated. Fortunately, Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gisli didn't show any malice. Otherwise, Cimenta would really throw them into the sea. That night, the research ship passed by the Hawaiian Islands. However, the ship didn't stop. Instead, it continued on its planned route. As they left the coastal waters, the waves on the sea grew stronger and stronger. Nevertheless, the research ship was still stable in the wind and waves. After all, it was a large ship with a displacement of more than 18,000 tons. Miss, let's just throw them into the sea, Herberly said, annoyed. If they're on our ship, we'll be restrained. Even if we see a fat sheep, we won't dare to attack them. Neither of them is simple. You've seen it. 2 days ago, Guret saw the Huasha man surnamed Chen, and then he ran to our ship to greet him regardless of the danger. Their friendship is really incomparable to that of ordinary people. We can't afford to offend Aquilati Gisli. Do you think they're really out of their minds to come to our ship to play? What could we have on the ship that they're after? That's what I find strange too. They boarded our ship on purpose. It's obvious that they're after something on the ship. Just then, a crewman ran in. Captain, there's a kayak up ahead. There's a man on it. He seems to have drifted on the sea for a few days. He looks like he's starved to death. Cimenta and Herberly exchanged glances. Pull him up to take a look. The two also went to the deck and watched as the kayak was pulled up by a crane. The man on the kayak looked haggard. Who knew how long he'd been drifting on the sea? He was on the verge of death. Only his faint panting let people know that he was still alive. Miss, what should we do? Herberly asked in a low voice. Since we've saved him, let's treat him and see if he's useful, Cimenta replied in a low voice. After that, the victim, who had almost turned into a dried-up corpse, was carried into the cabin by 2 crew members. Cimenta looked back at Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gisli, who were on the second deck. These days, they liked to stay on the second deck and whisper to each other, leaning against the second deck. Chun Zhao and Aquilati Gisli watched the victim being pulled up. That person is covered in curses. Maybe he's the one who's here to welcome us, Aquilati Gisli said. What's the point of this? I think I've guessed Leviathan at Baron Tegmas's intentions. What's the point? Chapter 2532. If Leviathan left the mark on the ship, it means that he needs resources. If he left the mark on a person, it means that he needs the person, Aquilati Gurley said. Although I don't know why Leviathan Aberan Tegmis needs Cimenta. Since he left a mark on Cimenta, it means that Cimenta is of some value to Leviathan Aberan Tegmis. But the others on the ship aren't the people he wants, so he either recycles them and turns them into low-level sources of pollution or uses them as food. Either way, he won't let them enter Demon Island's waters. Sources of pollution? Like that dying guy? He's a pathogen, Aquilati Gurley said. The curse and voodoo he carries will infect most people on the ship. Those who are infected are called sources of pollution. What's the difference? Although pathogens and sources of pollution can infect others with voodoo and curses, the source of pollution is just a simple infection. After a pathogen infects others with voodoo and curses, it will absorb most of the vitality and power of the other party. People who become sources of pollution will also lose their vitality and become hungry. At this time, they need to constantly infect others, and everyone who is directly infected or indirectly infected will have their vitality flow to the pathogen. In other words, the more people it infects, the more powerful the pathogen will be. Yes. If you throw this pathogen in a densely populated area, won't it be invincible? It's not that simple. Basically, people in the spiritual world know how to deal with this kind of enemy. As long as you kill the pathogen, other sources of pollution will die too. Even if you throw it in a densely populated area, it won't really grow. Unless it infects tens of thousands of people, it won't be much trouble for most spiritualists. Chun Xiao thought about it. It made sense. Unless thousands or tens of thousands of people were all gathered in a small space. Otherwise, the pathogen wouldn't be able to infect them all at once. Moreover, indirect transmission would be easily discovered. How is he? Cimenta asked. Looks like he's just dehydrated and malnourished, the doctor said. I'll inject him with a bottle of glucose first. When he wakes up, I'll arrange some food for him. Ahem. Also, arrange a cabin with better ventilation for him. This cabin is too stuffy. Although Cimenta heard the doctor's words, she didn't plan to do so. She did not save this person out of a sudden kindness. He just wanted to confirm his identity and maybe get some benefits from him. In fact, this logic was very simple. If the victim was in trouble on a ship, the priority to be assigned to the lifeboat would definitely be the person with the highest status or the richest person. Therefore, Cimenta felt that he had some value. Cimenta and the ship's doctor went out of the cabin. For some reason, Cimenta felt uneasy. When he wakes up, let's confirm his identity first. If he's worthless, ahem. I know what to do, the ship doctor said. None of the people on this ship were good people. Basically, good people wouldn't board this ship. Looks like you're also sick. Don't go to the deck to enjoy the sea breeze for the next 2 days. Cough, cough. Maybe I caught a cold last night. The ship's doctor coughed a few more times. The first infected person has appeared. I want to see what happens next, Aquilati Gurley said. Let's see what happens next, Aquilati Gurley said. Chun Xiao had the same plan. However, Chun Xiao and Aquilati Gurley's curiosity didn't last long. That was because the first infected doctor fainted in the evening of the same day. That night, 2 crew members helped take care of the doctor. Then they were indirectly infected too. All this happened under Chun Xiao and Aquilati Gurley's watchful eyes. However, the 2 were very cold-blooded spectators. They had no intention of interfering. Damn it, the guy we saved yesterday seems to have some kind of infectious disease. The ship doctor treated him yesterday and he got sick. Now the ship doctor has infected the other 2 crew members, Heppley said to Cimenta. What do we do now? We can't keep the guy on the ship. Throw him into the sea, Cimenta said, her face pale. Also wear a gas mask. Don't get infected again. Heppley nodded and called for the 2 crew members to follow him. They arrived outside the cabin of the person they'd saved yesterday. You too wear gas masks, and drag that guy out." The two crew members were a bit unwilling, but they had to listen to happily hear. However, the moment they opened the cabin, they were both shocked. "Happily, come in and see." When Herberly entered the cabin, he was also shocked. The body of the shriveled patient on the bed swelled up a little. The cabin was filled with a strange mucus. The mucus intersected with each other, blocking everyone's path. "Happily, do you know what's going on?" Happili's expression was serious. He didn't know what it was. However, he knew that it definitely wasn't anything good. Just then, the pathogen on the bed suddenly opened its eyes. Then it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of mucus. A crew member couldn't dodge in time and was sprayed by the mucus. The mucus pinned the crew member to the wall behind him. "Quick, save me." The crew member screamed in horror. Happily and the other crew member were scared out of their wits. The pathogen stood up unsteadily. Happily looked at the crew member who was pinned to the wall and shouted, "Go." At the same time, Happily pulled the frightened crew member out and closed the cabin door. However, they could still see through the round glass on the cabin door. They saw the pathogen stagger towards the crew member who was pinned to the wall. Facing the crew member who was screaming in horror, the pathogen opened its mouth. It didn't directly touch the crew member, but the crew member's body began to wither. On the contrary, the pathogen was withering. His originally shriveled body was becoming plump. Seeing this scene, Happily and the other crew member were scared pale. Happily didn't dare to delay any longer. "You watch over here. I'll inform the captain." "Ah, me. What are you afraid of? That guy can't come out. Lock the cabin door." Chapter 2533. After hearing Herberly's words, Samantha immediately followed him to the pathogen's cabin. Through the glass window, she saw the strange scene inside. Samantha's expression turned serious. Suddenly, she thought of something and exclaimed, "Go to the doctor! There are 2 other infected crew members in the cabin." Herbery and Samantha went to the 2 crew members' cabins first. They found that they were withered, just like the pathogen. Samantha and Herbery didn't dare to go in. They had someone seal the cabin door. Just then, a crew member ran over hurriedly. "Captain, assistant, the doctor's cabin is empty. He's missing." Samantha and Herbery's expressions changed drastically. What they were most worried about had finally happened. Samantha and Herbery immediately told all the crew members to be on guard. They also arranged for all the crew members to search for the doctor. Everyone was equipped with weapons. If they found the doctor, they could kill him directly. But after searching for a while, they couldn't find him at all. Moreover, the ship was too big. There were many pipes and circuits that people couldn't go in to check. They could only leave it at that. They could only hope that the doctor had fallen into the sea. It seems that the infected people don't become stupid. Instead, they become much smarter. "The doctor didn't become smarter," Aqualotti Ghastly said. "He lost his intelligence and gained instincts." Both knew where the doctor was hiding. After he woke up, he wasn't himself anymore. At the moment, the doctor was hiding in the ventilation duct. "Does he want to spread the voodoo and curse through the duct?" Chun Zhao asked. If the voodoo and curse could be spread over long distances, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Both the pathogen and the source of the infection have to be spread over a short distance to infect the target. He's only hiding in the duct for a sneak attack. While Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Ghastly were discussing, Chun Zhao suddenly stopped talking. One of the crew members was attacked by the doctor. The crew member returned to the cabin alone. He wanted to lie on the bed and rest. But as soon as he closed his eyes, the doctor climbed out of the duct without a sound. Before the crew member could even open his eyes, the doctor had already pressed him onto the bed. What happened next couldn't be described as disgusting. It was also very dirty. Chun Zhao gave up on the surveillance. Only Aqualotti Ghastly was still monitoring all the movements on the ship with great interest. For the rest of the day, everyone on the ship was in a state of panic. More, and more people were infected. In the beginning, Simenta and Hepari were able to barely control the situation. The infected people were locked in the cabins. But as the number of people increased, the situation became chaotic. Those who were infected did not immediately lose their minds, but they didn't want to be locked up and wait for death. Or rather, they didn't want to die alone. They pulled everyone down to die with them. This caused the two sides to start fighting. This is a human. Aqualati Gasley glanced at Chen Zhao. This is human nature. Plus, you don't seem to have the right to mock me, right? You're attacking your own kind to survive, aren't you? You're using your own kind as stepping stones to escape. Humans aren't the only ones who do this. Demons do it too. I won't defend myself. I don't like the hypocrisy of humans, but humans know how to create. This is something powerful demons can't compare to. Aqualati Gasley said indifferently. He held a glass of iced whiskey in his left hand and a bottle in his right. Do you want one? Bang, bang. Just then, 2 gunshots came from the cabin below. They'd heard many gunshots today, but the 2 shots were very close. Then they saw Simenta and Hepari run out. They both had guns. After coming out of the corridor, they closed the cabin door and bolted it. Only then did the 2 heave a sigh of relief. Everyone in the cabin had gone crazy. Everyone. It was as if they'd gone crazy. They couldn't tell who was infected either. Everyone was infected, but because of this, they didn't dare to come into contact with others, afraid of being infected. Anyone who dared to cough would be seen as an infected person. Those who were infected at the beginning also started to change. This caused the situation to become even more chaotic. Simenta and Hepari could no longer control the situation, so they could only escape outside. But as soon as they took a breather, they realized that Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gasley were on the second deck. The cold wind was howling outside. The 2 on the second deck were still drinking iced whiskey. Seeing the 2 of them, Simenta was infuriated. Their cabin was already in a mess. However, the 2 of them acted as if nothing had happened and stayed out of the matter. It was as if the chaos on the ship had nothing to do with them. Hepari suddenly raised his gun and aimed it at Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. Are you going to kill 2 of the 4 normal people on the ship? Aqualati Gasley asked, smiling. Both Simenta and Hepari's faces turned green. Do you know what happened on the ship? Yes. The person you saved yesterday had some kind of disease, and it spread to your people. You already knew, didn't you? Simenta suddenly vented his anger on the 2 annoying people in front of him. How would we know? Who could have predicted this? Simenta pressed down on Hepari's gun. When the 2 walked to the second deck, they realized that it was filled with all kinds of supplies and food. Where did these come from? We moved them out when you were having a civil war. Is there a problem? You're just going to take advantage of us? Simenta's suppressed anger rose again. Aqualati, you're indeed too much, Chen Zhao said. Is that so? Am I going too far? Can we return these things to them? Simenta's face turned red. In the end, he snorted heavily. Don't be unhappy. Look, I also brought 2 sleeping bags for you. You can sleep outside tonight. At least you won't freeze to death. At this moment, the cabin had completely fallen, and most of those who were still alive had already been infected. Even if they weren't, they wouldn't dare to go in and take the supplies. So, these supplies had become their life-saving straw. Although he was very unhappy with Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gasley, he had to admit that they had a clear mind and acted quickly. He was very displeased with Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. He had to admit that the 2 had a clear mind and acted quickly. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2534. At night, the sea was covered in a thick fog. It was also accompanied by a cold current. Both Simenta and Hepburn shivered in the cold wind. Even their sleeping bags couldn't keep their body warm. Simenta was woken up by the cold. When she opened her eyes, she realized that Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gasley hadn't gone to sleep. Right now, They were both sitting on a folding chair with fishing rods in front of them and drinking alcohol. Simenta was speechless. "Aren't you cold at all?" The two weren't wearing much. It was a foggy night with a cold current. How could they not feel cold? Even the iron railings were covered in icicles. Even Simenta was woken up by the cold in her sleeping bag. It wasn't hard to imagine how cold it was. However, Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley faced the cold wind fearlessly. It was too abnormal. Awake! Chun Zhao turned around and glanced at Simenta. "Do you want a glass of cold whiskey?" "It feels great." Aqualati Gasley patted his big belly. Simenta was completely speechless. Alcohol could drive away the cold, but in such an environment even alcohol was useless, let alone whiskey. Simenta couldn't sleep anymore. It was too cold. He couldn't sleep at all. Simenta stood up and put on a thick jacket. "Where are we now?" "I don't know," Chun Zhao said indifferently. "Do you dare to enter the cockpit?" At this moment the cockpit had long since been covered by those sticky things. Going in would only result in death. Simenta looked at Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. "Aren't you worried about your safety at all?" "Of course, but what can we do?" "That's right. Worrying is unnecessary, so it's better to just stay put." A while later, Hepburn woke up too. "Miss, why don't you sleep a bit longer? What do you think?" Simenta said unhappily. "Have you thought of anything?" Hepburn looked around and then at Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. Then she shook her head. It was obvious that Hepeli had something to say. Clearly, he was worried about Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. But Huperi gave Simenta a look. Not long after, the two met at the bow of the ship. Here, the cold wind was howling and the waves were crashing. They believed that their conversation would definitely not be heard by Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. "What do you think?" "Miss, this ship is completely out of control. We can't stay here any longer. The only way to survive is the submarine." Herberly pointed at the small submarine hanging on the arm. "But the control stick is in the cockpit." "I'll go in," Huperi said. "No, it's filled with that kind of mucus. That mucus contains the virus. If you go in, you'll become like those people." "Not for a while. As long as we get rid of the infected people in the cockpit, I will control the crane to lower the submarine. However, we cannot let those two people go up. Also, we have to find a way to bring the food up." "Hepeli, you don't have to do this." Of course, Simenta didn't want Hepeli to die. Her relationship with Hepeli was naturally incomparable to that of the other crew members. She didn't care even if all the other crew members died. But she didn't want Hepeli to die, especially if he sacrificed himself for her. "No, this is our only hope." Holding the gun in his hand, Hepeli looked at Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley on the second deck. "I'll go kill them now," Hepeli said decisively. Simenta immediately became nervous. "Hepeli, let's think of another way." "There's no other way. Mississippi, don't say anything." Hepeli walked toward Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. Suddenly, he raised the gun and pointed at them. "Hepeli, what are you doing?" Aqualati Gasley looked at Hepeli. "What do you think?" "I think you're joking." "It's not funny," Hepeli replied coldly. "Even if you want to kill us with a gun, you should at least load it with bullets." Aqualati Gasley opened his left hand, revealing a dozen bullets. Hepeli's expression changed. When you were asleep, of course," Aqualati Gasley teased. Aqualati Gisley teased. "I saw you putting your gun in your belt while you were sleeping. I was afraid that you would accidentally fire and shoot your penis, so I kindly put away your bullets. Aren't you grateful to me?" Hepeli suddenly pulled out a dagger from behind him. He seemed to be planning to fight Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley. He thought that with a dagger in hand, Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley definitely wouldn't be his match. However, Aqualati Gasley took out a pistol. "Ha! You lost." Hepeli's face was livid. He knew that he'd lost. "Do you really think that submarine can save Simenta?" How did you know our conversation? Both Hepeli and Cimenta were shocked. The bow of the submarine was 30 meters away. The wind and waves were strong, so the sound couldn't reach them. If I said SF, would you believe me? Huh, you planted a bug on us. Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley both rolled their eyes. Even an idiot knows what you're trying to do. You want to kill us and take the resources. Mr. Aqualotti, please stop, Cimenta finally said. Hepeli, put down your knife too. Hepeli thought for a moment and finally put down his knife. If he had a chance of winning, he wouldn't give up on the idea. But no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than Aqualotti Gasley's gun. Aqualotti Gasley put away his gun without hesitation. This action made Hupri eager to give it a try. Yo, the big fish took the bait. Chun Zhao's sudden voice gave Hepeli and Cimenta a fright. Chun Zhao pulled the rod hard, and a 300-kilogram bluefin tuna flew into the air. Then it smashed heavily at their feet. Hepeli and Cimenta's expressions changed. They really didn't realize that Chun Zhao was so strong before. Even the most experienced fisherman would have to struggle for 2 hours to pull such a huge tuna out of the water. But Chun Zhao had actually lifted the fish into the air. It felt like he'd caught a small fish. His strength was too terrifying. This fish is enough for us to eat for more than 10 days. In this weather, there's a lot of ice on the hull. We don't have to worry about water at all. We can keep going without taking risks. Chapter 2535. It seemed that their crisis had been resolved for now. Hupri turned to look at Cimenta. Cimenta nodded. She didn't want Hupri to die here either. Since they had given up on the plan, Cimenta and Hupri sat down again. They both noticed that Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley didn't seem worried about the current situation at all. Or rather, they were afraid. Even though Cimenta and Hupri made a living at sea all year round, they were still frightened by this situation. Even so, they were still frightened by this situation. However, these two seemed to be completely fine. Those who wanted to eat, those who wanted to play, played. Cimenta and Hupri were both helpless and speechless. On the other hand, Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley were still arguing over who should get the meat from the belly of the tuna. Mr. Chin, Mr. Aqualotti, aren't you going to think about how to get out? Didn't I say that we'll get off the ship in a few days? You can't even keep us here. You think you can get away in a few days? No, we're just getting off. Cimenta was furious again. No matter what she asked, Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley just beat around the bush. They didn't answer her directly or lie to her. The next day it was already dawn, but the sky was still dark. The research ship was still shrouded in fog. The cold wind was still blowing, and the temperature was still dropping. Cimenta and Hupri really admired Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gasley. The two of them had been fishing since last night. They seemed to be having competition. Dozens of big and small fish had already been thrown onto the deck. They probably wouldn't be able to finish them in a month. The two didn't rest at all. $1 million, Aqualotti Gasley said. Aqualotti Gasley said as he lifted his fishing rod and a fish weighing 2 or 3 kilograms was pulled out. Mine is also $1 million. Let's cancel it. This time the two made a rule. They wouldn't use magic or supernatural powers. They would just fish with ordinary skills. No matter the size, one fish was worth $1 million. Cimenta looked at the two and was even more speechless. The two of them were really bored out of their minds. If they were so bored, why did they board the ship? The third day, why isn't the fog dispersing? Miss, although we did not control the ship has been moving forward. We should have left this fog long ago. Have you seen this before? No. Hepeli shook his head. Logically speaking, the fog on the sea will disappear as quickly as it comes. At most, it will only last for 1 or 2 hours. The wind is strong, and it will disperse quickly. I've never seen a fog that hasn't passed after 2 days of sailing. This trip is really strange, Cimenta said with a dark expression. With that, he couldn't help but look at Qin Zhao and Aqualotti Gaslight on the second deck. At this moment, the two were sleeping soundly in their sleeping bags. Happily looked at the two of them and said, "Miss, do you want to forget it? We have enough food and water on the ship. There's no need to make things difficult for them. And haven't you noticed? Every time we try to make things difficult for them, we end up losing." "That was just an accident," Happily said, unconvinced. "Those two people have been deliberately toying with us. Haven't you noticed?" "So what? They're asleep now. Can they still guard against us?" Just then, Aqualotti Gaslight, who had been lying in his sleeping bag, suddenly turned his head and looked at the two people on the deck. "I heard you." Happili's face darkened. This damned old man. Happily could not do anything to the two. Although he complained a lot, he did not really mention ambushing them again. Fortunately, Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gaslight had caught fish. Although they were drifting on the sea, they did not have to starve. Also, the weather was so cold that they did not have to worry about the fish rotting. They would get tired of eating fish every day, though, but there was nothing they could do about it. Rather than starving, this bit of fishy smell wasn't something he couldn't bear. 2 more days passed like this. Bang! Suddenly, the ship seemed to have crashed into something. Samantha and Heapily hurried to the side of the ship to check. Looking down, they realized that their research ship seemed to have hit a reef. There was a huge shadow in the water. Samantha and Heapily's expressions did not look good. If the ship hit the reef, they would be completely trapped here. "Miss, look." Heapily suddenly pointed ahead. Samantha looked up and immediately saw what seemed to be a very large black shadow in the fog ahead. An island? This discovery excited Samantha to no end. "It looks like it's less than 3 kilometers from here," Heapily estimated. "The current wind direction and the waves aren't strong." "We can reach the island with a kayak," Heapily said. They already had a kayak, so they did not need to take the risk. As soon as Heapily finished speaking, a kayak balloon landed under their feet. Heapily and Samantha looked up. Aqualotti Gaslight was looking at them with a matter-of-fact expression. "Blow." "Why don't you blow?" Heapily looked at them, annoyed. "You've eaten our food for so many days. Shouldn't it be time for you to make some effort?" "We're not in a hurry to get to the island," Heapily said, annoyed. Bang! Aqualotti Gaslight pointed his gun at the sky and fired a shot. Samantha and Heapily's expressions darkened. In the past few days, Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gaslight had not done anything serious. Samantha and Heapily even forgot that they had guns. In the end, Heapily still blew. Half an hour later, the four finally got on the kayak. But after a few hundred meters, they realized that the shallow waters around them were all sunken ships. Some sunken ships were completely stuck in the bottom of the sea, with the bottom sticking straight out of the water. It looked like a graveyard for ships. It was quite creepy. Just then, a gust of wind pushed their boat toward the shore. It was the first time Samantha and Heapily had stepped on land in so many days. They were so touched that they almost cried. This feeling of solidity was really ecstatic. "Tegmis, I'm back!" Aqualotti Gaslight shouted. "Hey, you'll expose us if you shout like that." Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. "We didn't plan to hide anyway. Plus, he probably knew when we got on the island. I don't feel comfortable here. I can't expand my territory. Of course, the whole Demon Island is within the scope of his domain." 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2536. What are you two mumbling about? Huperi yelled impolitely. Chun Zhao and Aqualotti Gaslight looked back at Huperi and Samantha. Samantha was confused. Was this their destination? No, they hadn't controlled the ship's direction in the past few days. No one knew where they would go. Their original plan was to encounter an ocean-going ship along the way. That way they could be saved. They had never planned to land on this island. Even now, Samantha still felt that it was a coincidence. But judging from their expressions, they seemed to have known that they would come here. At this moment, a figure swayed in front of them. When Samantha and Huperi saw the figure, Their expressions changed drastically. The figure was thin and shriveled, just like the pathogen from the other day. How could there be such a thing here? Could it be that the guy they rescued that day had escaped from this island? Thinking of this, Simenta and Huperi shuddered. At this time, Aqualati gisly walked in front of the pathogen. Then he raised his gun and stuffed the muzzle into the pathogen's mouth. Bang! How's my shooting? Aqualati Gasly blew at the smoke from the muzzle proudly. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. I can shoot at this distance, too. Be careful, Huperi warned. It's hard to kill. They were all in the same boat now. He certainly didn't want any of them to die. A few days ago, when the research ship was in chaos, he and Simenta had fought their way out and killed many infected people. These infected people were very tenacious. They could only die completely by shooting their brains. Aqualati Gasly's shot just now might not be enough to kill them. Huperi had wanted to stab the pathogen a few more times, but Aqualati Gasly lifted his foot and kicked the pathogen's head away like a soccer ball. Where are we going now? Qin Zhao asked. To Tajimus's nest, Aqualati Gasly said. I'll fulfill my promise first. What? All his treasures, of course, said Aqualati Gasly. Qin Zhao smiled brightly. I like it. Aqualati Gasly turned back and tossed the pistol in his hand to Huperi. What for? Hepeli didn't expect Aqualati Gasly to give him the weapon so easily. Did this mean that their roles had been reversed? Although they didn't need to fight to the death. But he could not understand Aqualati Gisli's thoughts at all. He would never give the initiative to someone else. However, neither Qin Zhao nor Aqualati Gasly took it to heart. The two of them walked in front. Simenta and Huperi exchanged glances and followed them. Why isn't anyone stopping us? Didn't you say that Tegmis had already discovered us? He may be dealing with other enemies, maybe the psionic team, Aqualati Gasly said. Qin Zhao's territory was now only 1,000 meters in diameter. It couldn't expand any further. This was because he was now in the domain of others. Therefore, he didn't know the exact situation of the island. The island was much larger than they'd imagined. There were no enemies to stop them along the way. Looks like Tegmis is in a lot of trouble, Aqualati Gasly said gloatingly. Walking out of the beach, there was a dense forest ahead. It was rugged and difficult to walk through. The sky was dark and gloomy, but the vegetation here was lush. Qin Zhao didn't feel that this place was dark or scary. From the looks of it, this was just a deserted island overflowing with life. This island doesn't look as dangerous as I thought, Hepeli said, sighing. Don't jinx it, Qin Zhao said. What did you say? Hepeli looked at Qin Zhao, dissatisfied. Don't you know? What you just said is a typical death flag. In horror movies, once you say that this place isn't as dangerous as you think it is, all kinds of trouble will come knocking on your door, and the person who says that is usually the first to die. Idiot. Hepeli rolled his eyes. How could he believe such a stupid plot? Simenta thought the same. Just then, an extremely shrill cry came from the depths of the forest. The shrill cries reverberated through the forest. Both Hepeli and Simenta were shocked. For a moment, they couldn't tell what creature had made the cry, but the sound was too horrifying, especially since Qin Zhao had just joked about it. Hepeli's expression immediately darkened. Looks like there's really something we don't know about on this island, Qin Zhao said, chuckling. He seemed to be gloating. Hepeli recovered a bit and said, maybe it's some wild bird or something. Can wild birds make that kind of sound? Even if it's a wild bird, Aqualati Gasly said, looking at Hepeli. If it can make such a loud sound, it can probably swallow you. Don't forget that I have a gun, Hepeli said. Hepeli saw the mockery on Qin Zhao and Aqualati Gasly's faces. In a moment of anger, Hepeli almost shot the two guys. Not long after, a cave appeared in front of the four of them. The cave was very large. There was even a small stream of underground water flowing out of the cave. You want to go in? Happily looked at Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly in confusion. Why do we have to go in? Who knows what's inside? Don't worry, there's definitely no monster inside. Aqualati Gasly didn't forget to mock Happily again. With that, Aqualati Gasly walked in first. Chun Zhao followed closely behind. Miss, should we follow? Let's see what they're up to. Miss, don't you think there's something wrong with them? Of course. Even a blind person can tell that they seem to know about this island. Walking in front, Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly could already smell the faint smell of sulfur in the air. It wasn't fatal, but Happily and Simenta still felt uncomfortable. Normal people wouldn't like the smell of hell, even if it was very faint. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 25:37. The cave was very deep. It led straight into the belly of the mountain. The ground was rugged and uneven. Water kept seeping out from underground rivers. Both Simenta and Happily felt uncomfortable. The ground was too hard to walk on. Suddenly, 2 light bulb-like lights appeared before them. Simenta and Happily stopped in their tracks, because under the 2 light sources, there was a faintly discernible figure. They could also hear heavy breathing in front of them. That thing was huge, really huge. It was probably 3 or 4 meters tall. Simenta and Happily felt like their scalps were going to explode. That thing was approaching them bit by bit. His body was gradually revealed. Happily immediately raised his gun and pointed at the huge beast. It was a huge black panther that was more than 4 meters tall and 8 meters long. Pennigan, long time no see. Aqualati Gasly grinned and greeted him warmly. Aqualati, you asterisk shoal, how dare you come here again? The panther demanded loudly. Are you looking to die? Simenta and Happily widened their eyes. Did Aqualati Gasly know this terrifying panther? And the panther was talking? Him. Speaking human language? I don't know if I'm courting death, but you're blocking my way now. I think you're courting death. Aqualati Gasly looked at the black panther named Pennigan with a smile. Simenta and Happily's expressions turned serious. They seemed to have sensed something. But right now, they were trapped in a bigger mystery. An unknown and mysterious world was unfolding before them. You'll pay for your stupidity. Penny slowly retreated and disappeared into the depths of the cave. It ended just like that. Nothing happened. Aqualati Gasly only said a few harsh words, scaring away that huge black panther. Isn't this too inconceivable? They weren't equal no matter how they looked at it. However, Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly didn't seem surprised at all. Their expressions were matter-of-fact. Let's go. It's not far. They didn't see Penny along the way, but Simenta and Happily became more and more uneasy. At this moment, a light appeared in front of them. The 2 of them were startled again. He thought that the big black panther had come again. However, upon closer inspection, the light did not come from the beast's eyes. Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly sped up toward the source of the light. Happily and Simenta followed closely behind, afraid that the black panther would snatch them away if they got lost. The iron door in front of them was not a problem for Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly. Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasly pulled open the iron door from the left and right. A huge underground warehouse appeared in front of everyone. There was only one thing in the warehouse, gold nugget, and it was the only one. It was a block of gold that was 10 meters in length, width, and height. According to the density of gold, 1932 g/cubic centimeter. Therefore, this 10 by 10 by 10 piece of gold was 19,320 tons. Even Chun Zhao was shocked. What did 19,320 tons of gold mean? According to the current price of gold, 1 ton was about $40 million. 19,320 tons would be 772, $8 billion. Of course, if all the gold flowed out, the price of gold would be reduced to cabbages. if he paid taxes according to the normal procedures, Chen Zhao might get less than 1/10 of the current market price in the end. Looking at the gold before him, Chen Zhao was both excited and conflicted. What do you think? Isn't this a big gift? Aqualati Gisli asked. Chen Zhao swallowed. Big, big. Not only Chen Zhao, but even Simenta and Herperi were shocked. However, Simenta and Huperi doubted that Chen Zhao could take it away. Gold was too heavy, and such a large amount of gold could only be transported by super freighters in this world. Moreover, the gold had to be cut before it could be transported. If it was just a square piece, how could it be delivered to the ship? Even if there was a way to do it, if it was placed on a freighter, it would directly create a hole in it. They could not help but care about something that had nothing to do with them. What else? I don't want gold. It's somewhere else, but it won't be as smooth as here. Let's go. Show me my property. 4 people appeared at the entrance at the other end of the huge warehouse. They had different body types. One was tall, one was short, one was fat, and one was skinny. Lord Aquilati, long time no see. I didn't think we would meet under these circumstances, the tall man said. The tall man spoke. He was polite to Aquilati Gisli. Ha! Are you going to block my way? No, I'm here to take her away, the tall man said, pointing at Simenta. It was always the tall man who spoke. The short, fat, and skinny ones all had different expressions, but their eyes were very nervous. Her. Aquilati Gisli pointed at Simenta. Simenta and Herperi immediately tensed up. Is she very important to Tejimis? Aquilati Gisli asked meaningfully. The expressions of the 4 people gradually froze. Lord Aquilati, we won't stop you. Can you also help us complete our mission successfully? Huh. Then you should know that I'm not here as a guest, right? Boom. Suddenly, the wall in front of Chen Zhao's group was smashed into pieces without warning. A gigantic and terrifying body crashed into them. This was a giant dragon covered in cuts and bruises. Tall, short, fat, thin, and tall didn't even have time to react before they were crushed under the huge dragon's body. At this moment, Simenta and Huperi were dumbfounded. What was going on? What the hell is this? It was almost 100 meters long. That was enough to shock anyone. The dragon, covered in wounds, could barely support its body. Then it looked at Chen Zhao's group. Mr. Chen, why are you here? The dragon asked in surprise. Simenta and Herperi were completely dumbfounded. First, there was a huge black panther. Then it knew Aquilati Gisli. Now, there was an even more terrifying creature that knew Chen Zhao. Who exactly were they? Were all the people they knew monsters? You? Who are you? Do we know each other? Chen Zhao looked at the dragon in confusion. I'm Akrabumon. I'm Yang's wife. Ah, Xiaolongnu? Chen Zhao slapped his head. By the way, you look hurt. Do you need to rest? Chapter 2538. Just then, 2 demons, one big and one small, fell out of the hole that Akrabumon had created. The big demon was at least 5 meters tall. He carried a huge axe on his shoulder, and many parts of his body were covered in metal. There was also a nose ring on his nose. The other one was almost the same size as a human. He was dressed like a medieval noble and had a pair of demon wings on his back. The 2 demons didn't seem to care about the people present at all. The small demon pointed at Akrabumon and said, Kwang Tu, cut off this dragon's head. That's my trophy. Hey, don't ignore us, Aquilati Gisli called. Charmin. The demon named Charmin looked at Orquilati Gisli with a somewhat arrogant attitude. Orquilati, Master already knows of your arrival. Master asked me to get rid of you. But before that, can you let me collect my spoils first? Charmin pointed at Akrabumon. He clearly wanted to get rid of Akrabumon quickly. Only then could he devote himself to the battle with Aquilati Gisli. After all, an adult giant dragon was a great threat to him. Although the dragon in front of him wasn't an adult yet, she already had the power to threaten him. Just then, Kwang Tu waved his axe. He suddenly leaped high and slashed at a crabwoman's head. Come here. Chen Zhao suddenly waved his hand. Before Kwang Tu could land, he was suddenly hit by an invisible force in the air. He deviated from his direction and landed in front of Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao picked up the handle of the axe that had fallen in front of him. Kwang Tu shook his head and climbed up. Chen Zhao had already raised his axe. No. Seeing Chen Zhao's actions, Charman's expression changed drastically. He pounced at Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao was even faster. The next moment, he suddenly took a big step forward. At the same time, he grabbed Charman's neck and pressed him to the ground. The force was so great that the ground shattered. Cracks spread out like a spider web. At the same time, he swung the axe with his other hand. Kwang Tu's upper body was split open. Chen Zhao dropped the axe and grabbed Charman's head, squeezing hard. Crack! Chen Zhao crushed Charlemagne's head. Chen Zhao stood up and clapped his hands. Aquilati, why are these two so weak? I thought that since he dared to challenge you, he should be very strong, or at least close to your strength, but Tegemus's men are all idiots, Aquilati Gasly said disapprovingly. At this moment, Cimenta and Huperi were scared silly. He was really scared silly. It was as if all the legendary things had appeared at the same time. Dragons, demons, and terrifying humans. As for Akrabumon, he was also shocked. After all, she was abused by these two demons to the point where she couldn't even take care of herself. In the end, he was killed by Chen Zhao in a few moves. She knew that Chen Zhao was very powerful. The ancestral founder had mentioned Chen Zhao many times. If they were in trouble, they would ask Chen Zhao for help. She only knew that Chen Zhao was very powerful, but she had never considered the question of how powerful Chen Zhao was. Now she knew. However, Chen Zhao was more interested in the super gold beside him. He reached out and touched it. The gold disappeared before everyone's eyes. Cimenta and Huperi were shocked again. Xiao Longnu, what's the situation with your guy? The psionic team just landed. I flew to this island, first to scout. I thought that with my ability, no one could stop me. Akrabuman's voice became softer and softer. Haha, this little dragon is so cute, so silly. Aquilati Gasly laughed loudly. What did you say? Do you dare say it again? Akrabumon was furious. You're an idiot. This time, Aquilati Gasly didn't beat around the bush. He scolded directly. Idiot, idiot, do you understand? You're asking for death, Akra roared furiously. Asking for death? You think you can do it? Little guy. All right, Xiao Longnu, don't be so rash. You'll ruin my beautiful image, Chen Zhao said comfortingly. Plus, you really can't beat him. Him? I don't feel anything different from him. He's just a human, an ordinary human. What do you think about me? Do you feel anything from me? I don't feel anything special either. Akrabumon looked at Aquilati Gasly hesitantly. Who is he? He calls himself the Great Demon of the North Sea. Yes, the Great Demon of the North Sea from Greek mythology. Cimenta and Huperi thought of the Great Demon of the North Sea. Then they compared it to the fat old man before them. Huh, this is the fucking Great Demon of the North Sea? Who are you kidding? But Akrabumon didn't plan to continue fighting. She knew that it wasn't the time for internal strife. Chen Zhao and Aquilati Gasly walked to the opening that Akrabumon had made. They realized that they were halfway up the mountain. Below them was a bottomless cliff. On the coastline in the distance, they could see a few landing craft docked. At the same time, there were also some people fighting. There weren't many people participating in the battle, at least not on the coast. But the sky above the island was already a mess. The sky was filled with demons, but they were fighting each other. What's going on? Internal strife? Aquilati Gasly was both surprised and happy. He didn't know what was going on, but it was undoubtedly the best news for him. He guessed that another commander under Tejemus had betrayed him. Idiot! That's the demon army summoned by our ace, Master Belster. What? Aquilati Gaslight was also shocked. After careful observation, he could barely tell the difference between the two demon armies. But it seemed that Master Belster's demon army was even larger than Tejemus's. The numbers seemed to be increasing too. He couldn't understand. Who could summon such a large demon army? He couldn't understand at all. Ignorant, Akrabumon said in disdain. Aquilati Gaslight was infuriated by Akrabuman. Pointing at her, he asked, Chin, can I kill her? You can't offend her elders. Isn't it a dragon? Unless the Dragon Emperor comes to kill me. No, not the Dragon Emperor. It's the Celestial Master of Mount Longhu. Zhang Tianyi, can you afford to offend him? Chapter 2539. Perhaps Dragon Emperor was stronger than Zhang Tianyi, but the problem was that Dragon Emperor didn't see him in the outside world. But Zhang Tianyi was different. If he wanted someone, he could fly over to the Pacific Ocean with a sword. That would be a piece of cake. Hearing this, Aquilati Gisli's face looked like he'd eaten shit. But soon, his attention returned to the battlefield above Demon Island. The psionic team had a large demon army, but they weren't strong. However, their strength was generally not strong. Although there were many mid-level demons, only one of them had a demonic domain. On the other hand, even though the evil demon army of the Demon Island was inferior to the spiritual power team in terms of numbers, there were still many powerful evil demons. There were also many demons with demonic domains. Chen Zhao looked over and saw 6 or 7 big demons. There were strong and weak mid-level demons too. The difference in strength was huge. The most obvious characteristic was their domains. Demons with and without domains were on 2 different levels. For example, Kong Mosa, who'd attacked the supernatural organization's headquarters. He was a big demon and had a powerful demonic domain. As for the 4 great commanders under him, although they were all great fiends, they were all great demons. But their strength was worlds apart from Kong Mosa's. Ordinary mid-level demons might be stronger than big demons. But without demonic domains, they had no decisive power. Therefore, although great demons were classified as intermediate demons, they were closer to demon lords. Chun Zhao's heart ached as he watched the demons fall one after another. Half of the fallen demons were summoned by Toddy Belster. To Chun Zhao, the fallen demons weren't demons but money. How could Toddy Belster summon a demon army? He was an ordinary person. He didn't even have magic, unless it was a few taboos. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people couldn't use magic, but Toddy Belster could. It wasn't just because of the handsome guys summoning magic array. It was also because of Chen Zhao's wealth in hell. That was half of the 3-headed demon lord's wealth. Rather than saying that these demons were summoned, it would be better to say that they were hired. Before Chen Zhao's wealth in hell was used up, Toddy Belster could summon infinitely. But at the end of the day, it was still money. Where's your enemy? Which one? Chen Zhao asked. He's not on this battlefield. Not on this battlefield? Where is it? I don't know. Aquilati Gisli shook his head. That guy is very strange. Every time a strong enemy comes, he is nowhere to be seen. But every time, the enemy will leave angrily. Could he have dragged me into a different dimension to fight? No, it's because those powerful enemies would often stand still on the spot, and after a short while they would leave in shock. Is it a mental battlefield? Chun Zhao was hesitant. He had once had a mental battle. However, he was not afraid of a battle in his sea of consciousness. This was because as long as one knew how to use the sea of consciousness to fight, one would be able to possess the same strength as in reality, whether it was in the enemy's sea of consciousness or in one's own sea of consciousness. Moreover, his soul power was extraordinary. Of course, this was just Chen Zhao's personal guess. From Aquilati Gisli's description, it didn't seem to be as simple as a mental battle. However, it's time for me to show up. If I don't come out, I don't think Tajimis will come out in person. Aqualati Gasley also knew the situation on the battlefield like the back of his hand. The combat power of the psionic team had indeed exceeded his expectations. However, it was only unexpected. It was far from being decisive. The evil demon army was a refreshing sight, but the evil demon island's true power wasn't the evil demon army. With enough time, the demon commanders could kill all the demons summoned by the psionic team. After all, there was only one big demon on one side, while the other side had 7. The difference in high-end power was too great. So, Aqualati Gasley decided to make a move. Samantha and Hepri stared at Aqualati Gasley's back. Then they saw Aqualati Gasley open his arms and lean toward the cliff outside. No way. Is he committing suicide? Hepri's eyes widened as he watched Aqualati Gasley fall off the cliff. I can't understand it at all. Suddenly, a huge and terrifying tentacle rose up and blocked the hole that Acrobumin had created. The length and size of this tentacle was equivalent to Acrobumin's body. Acrobumin's face was filled with shock. He's really a giant North Sea demon? Samantha and Hepri were also shocked. The two rushed out of the hole. At this time, they were finally able to see Aqualati Gasley's real body. The legendary giant North Sea demon. How big was Aqualati Gasley's real body? Even Qin Zhao was shocked, because Aqualati Gasley's real body was more than 2,000 meters tall. If his 2 longest tentacles spread out, they would probably be 10,000 meters long. Aqualati Gasley's real body was a supergiant octopus. However, he didn't have 8 arms like an ordinary octopus. Instead, he had 16 tentacles. 8 tentacles were big and 8 small. But even the smallest tentacle was about the same diameter as an adult dragon. As soon as Aqualati Gasley appeared, the entire battlefield quieted down. Too big, it was simply too big. When the great Tao reached a terrifying level, it was like a moving mountain. One of Aqualati Gasley's tentacles slammed into the forest, creating a huge gap. Tegmis, come out! Aqualati Gasley roared. I'm back for revenge. He cut a demon in half at the waist with one slash. Yang took a deep breath and looked back at his psionic teammates. They had advanced less than 1,000 meters since they had landed. And this was the result of Toddy Belster's help in the rear. They couldn't imagine what would happen if Toddy Belster wasn't there. How would they fight this battle? Yang couldn't help but look back at Toddy Belster, who was standing on the bow. Toddy Belster was the only one who hadn't disembarked. But he was also the only one who didn't need to disembark and could use his full power. Even though he had summoned 100,000 demons, he still didn't stop. He seemed to be able to summon more demons. No matter how many were lost on the battlefield, he could replenish them endlessly. Chapter 2540. What is that? Blitz's mouth was agape, an expression of disbelief on his face. Are we going to fight that thing? We can't win. It's impossible. Yang also had a shocked expression on his face. That thing was too big. It was indescribably big. Mr. Belster. Yang looked at Toddy. Toddy Belster was also frightened. He was different from others. He wasn't very brave. Now that he saw that thing, he was even more terrified. It wasn't in his plan. Now he finally understood. Qin Zhao had reminded him before he left. However, he couldn't back down now. Just then, Toddy Belster opened her arms. A large magic array appeared before her. Then, giant demons crawled out of the array. The smallest of them was several meters tall, while the bigger ones were more than 10 or 20 meters. They either flew or ran. They were much stronger than the demons she'd summoned earlier. Some were even holding weapons. Yang saw Toddy Belster summon these powerful demons. He felt a little more at ease. However, he was also worried if Toddy Belster could summon enough demons to defeat the terrifying behemoth. As soon as Aqualati Gasley's unparalleled body appeared, It attracted a large number of demons. Regardless of friend or foe, they all charged at Aqualati Ghastly. Aqualati Ghastly's tentacles swept past. Countless demons were smashed into meat paste. Just then, more demons pounced at Aqualati Ghastly. However, they were more like ants in front of Aqualati Ghastly. Chun Zhao frowned. It was one thing for Aqualati Ghastly to kill the enemy, but why did he kill his own people too? Moreover, the people he'd killed had all been hired with his own money. Xiao Long knew. Tell your husband that he's one of us, Qin Zhao said. If you don't want that old guy to smash your husband into meat paste. Akrabumon nodded. She moved. Her giant body created a strong current of air. Thankfully, most of the enemies were attracted by Aqualati Ghastly. Akrabumon wasn't completely unharmed, but at least it was within her acceptable range. Bang! Dust flew in front of Yanghua. Akra, how are you? Yanghua was very worried when he saw that his wife was covered in wounds. He regretted bringing Akrabumon along. Chun Zhao had warned him a few times before. This place was far more dangerous than he had imagined, but he turned a blind eye to it. Or it could be said that he was holding onto a fluke mentality, especially after Toddy Belster displayed his great strength. He also felt that they might not necessarily lose in this expedition to Bermuda. Hubby, that big guy is one of us. Tell Master Belster not to attack him. What? That big guy is one of us? How could this be? When did we ever have that kind of ally? Akrabumon looked anxious. There were some things she knew, but she definitely couldn't say it in public. She knew about Qin Zhao and Yanggua's relationship, but if she said this in front of everyone, then the relationship between Yanghua and the psionic ability team would collapse. Are you sure that guy isn't the big boss here? It's true. He's enemies with the demons here. Look at those demons. They're all attacking that big guy. Only then did Yanghua notice that, indeed, both the enemy and friend seemed to be attacking the super big guy. Of course, the big guy was also attacking indiscriminately. When a demon charged over, Yanghua didn't even need to do anything. Akrabumon sent it flying with a slap. Open a path for our people. I'll go tell Master Belster. Yanghua jumped in front of Toddy Belster. Master Belster, that big guy isn't an enemy. He's on our side. On our side? Are you sure? Yes. My wife told me. Yanghua didn't know the exact situation now. Akrabumon seemed to know more, but her hesitant gaze indicated that there were some things that she couldn't say in public. Fine. Separate your demon army from the enemy. Don't get tangled up with them. Otherwise, that big guy's attacks won't be able to differentiate between friend and foe. Got it. Toddy Belster immediately ordered the demon army he summoned to split up and reorganize their formation. But he didn't let the demon army completely merge, even though Yanghua told him that the super big monster was their ally. But before he was completely sure, he didn't dare to risk so many demons. Just then, Aqualati Ghastly suddenly raised his tentacles and waved them at the enemy's demon army. And this time, without constraints, Aqualati Ghastly, who was completely free, also had no scruples. In an instant, the heavens fell and the earth cracked. The entire forest was flattened. Thousands of enemies were obliterated. Sure enough, he didn't attack us, Toddy Belster exclaimed in surprise. Very good. With this big guy, we'll be under a lot less pressure. After confirming that the big guy was on their side, it wasn't just Toddy Belster who was more confident. When Yanghua passed the news to the others, they all felt the same way. Originally, they thought they were dead for sure. They didn't expect things to turn around. The super big monster was actually on their side. Blitz even thought there might be a chance to rope the super big guy into the psionic team. Leaving that aside, Aqualati Ghastly was in trouble. The 7 devil commanders locked their eyes on Aqualati Ghastly. These 7 great demon commanders all had their own domains. Moreover, they were all powerful demons, second only to Leviathan Aberrant Tegmus. None of the 7 demon commanders were easy targets for Aquilati Gisli to kill. Suddenly, Aquilati Gisli aimed his mouth at the sky. Puff! A jet of black ink shot up into the sky. The black ink didn't attack any demons, and this kind of attack hardly hit anyone. But after the black ink shot into the clouds, black rain began to fall from the sky. In an instant, a large number of demons fell to the ground. It was another indiscriminate attack. Chapter 2541. Those who couldn't put up a magic shield, had nothing to hide, or had low poison resistance all fell. But it was indeed useful. Half of the demons were gone in an instant. Of course, the psionic team was also affected. Akrabumon used her dragon wings to block the poisonous rain for Yongwa and Toddy Belster. Dragons had high poison resistance. In fact, dragons were resistant to almost everything. Damn, is that monster really on our side? Save me! Save me! Aquilati's move successfully made 3/4 of the psionic team lose the ability to fight. In fact, not only did they lose the ability to fight, but they also lost their lives. Akrabumon was also shocked. She also didn't expect Aquilati to use such an indiscriminate attack. Aquilati, we know you too well, a demon leader said. This means nothing to us. None of the 7 demon leaders were hit. After all, they'd once been colleagues. So they knew Aquilati Gisli, just like how Aquilati Gisli knew them. Really? Do you really know me? Aquilati Gisli sneered at the 7 demon leaders. Just then, the poisonous rain began to evaporate. The air was filled with black poisonous gas. Be careful, don't breathe it in. The 7 demon leaders warned each other. The evaporating poisonous gas covered a wide area. Several mountains were enveloped by the gas. Regardless of whether it was plants, animals, or demons, most would not be spared. The deeper they went, the thicker it got. They couldn't even see their own fingers. Suddenly, a huge black shadow reached out from the poisonous gas. Bang! With a loud bang, a demon commander was struck and fell into the range of the poisonous gas. Then it never came out again. What? How? How is that possible? Where did that tentacle come from? Aquilati Gisli was right in front of them. He hadn't moved just now. Everyone had seen his entire body. Logically, he couldn't have ambushed them. But why did a tentacle come out of the poisonous gas? Chun Zhao was also surprised. As a bystander, he saw more clearly than the demon leaders. Aquilati Gisli indeed didn't move. At least his body didn't move. But why was there a tentacle in the poisonous gas? Be careful. There's something strange down there. The remaining 6 evil demon commanders were terrified. At present, they did not know what was going on. But as long as he was whipped by Aquilati Gisli's tentacles, it was definitely a narrow escape. One of their companions was already 1 step ahead of them. But at that moment, a tentacle reached down from the sky without any warning. Oh no! Be careful! Quick, dodge! The 3 devil commanders dodged. However, the 2 demon commanders did not expect the tentacles to fall from the sky, causing them to be slapped down by the tentacles. There was another demon commander who reacted a little slower. By the time he reacted, he had run in the wrong direction and was fleeing downwards. The fog below once again stretched out a tentacle and wrapped around the fiend commander. In the blink of an eye, 3 evil demon commanders had fallen, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The expressions of the remaining 3 demon commanders changed drastically. Once upon a time, Aquilati Gisli was their boss. He was also the most powerful subordinate under Leviathan Abhan Tajimus, and the leader of all the demons. But at that time, they were not demon commanders yet. After Aquilati Gisli's betrayal, they gained the status of devil commanders. They had once thought that if Aquilati Gisli dared to appear before them, they would be able to use his demon heart to prove their loyalty and strength to their master. They had once thought that if Aquilati Gisli dared to appear before them, they could use his demon heart to prove their loyalty and strength to their master. They did not think that Aqualati Gaslight was qualified to be a demon commander. But now they did not dare to think so anymore. Of the 8 demon commanders, except for Charmin who had disappeared, 4 of the 7 demon commanders had died. Chen Zhao looked at the sky in confusion. Just now, Aqualati Gaslight had sprayed the ink poison into the sky and then landed on the ground. Then the tentacles fell to the ground. In other words, the area that was contaminated by the ink poison would have tentacles appearing. Just then, the poisonous gas started spreading upward. Under Aqualati Gasly's control, the area at the edge spread the fastest, almost forming an enclosed area. Suddenly, Aqualati Gasly froze on the spot. Wow! In just a few seconds, Aqualati Gasly seemed to be in a daze, but he suddenly came back to his senses. But at this time, Aqualati Gisli had many wounds on his body. Chun Zhao's eyes widened, and he looked at Aqualati Gasly in shock. What's going on? Aqualati, what's wrong? What's going on? Divine gear! Aqualati shouted at Chen Zhao. Divine gear, divine gear. Be careful of divine gear. Divine gear? Chen Zhao stared at Aqualati Gasly. His wounds were caused by divine gear. Just then, a gust of wind blew the poisonous gas away. But an even bigger fog shrouded Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao frowned. Suddenly, Aqualati Gasly disappeared. The next moment, Aqualati Gasly's aura appeared again. Suddenly, a huge tentacle slapped the mountain wall Chen Zhao was standing on. Chen Zhao was sent flying. Both Samantha and Hupri were shocked. Wasn't Aqualati Gasly with Chen Zhao? Why did he suddenly attack Chen Zhao? Chen Zhao's entire body was embedded into the wall. Chen Zhao was a bit angry. He was angry at Aqualati Gasly. Even if it was a joke, it was too much. This was a battlefield. He shouldn't joke like this. Chen Zhao pulled out the limb embedded in the wall. Both Samantha and Hupri were shocked. Chen Zhao was hit by Aqualati Gasly's tentacle, and he was completely unharmed? What was this guy's body made of? Steel? Chen Zhao came to the cave entrance again and looked at Aqualati Gasly's faintly discernible body angrily. Aqualati, tell me, why did you attack me? If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, I'll kill you. Aqualati Gasly's tentacle responded to Chen Zhao's question. His huge tentacle slapped at Chen Zhao again. A cold light shot out of Chen Zhao's eyes. He charged at the tentacle and grabbed it with both arms. Get out! Chen Zhao picked up Aqualati Gasly. Whoosh, boom. Samantha and Hupri widened their eyes. Were they seeing things? Chen Zhao was insignificant compared to Aqualati Gasly. The difference could even be described as tiny, but he'd sent the terrifying Aqualati Gasly flying? 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 2542. Aqualati, do you want to die? Aqualati didn't give Chen Zhao a verbal answer. Instead, he answered Chen Zhao with his actions. Aqualati suddenly spewed a large amount of ink poison at Chen Zhao. Of course, this attack couldn't reach Chen Zhao. Aqualati, this is my last warning to you. Aqualati Gasly was Chen Zhao's ally. Chen Zhao could also feel that Aqualati wasn't normal. But Chen Zhao didn't know what the problem was. Was it an illusion? Making me and Aqualati Gisli hallucinate and think that the other party is attacking me? After the ink poison spread out, it turned into a poisonous mist and started rising. It's coming. A dozen tentacles suddenly shot out from the poisonous mist. Bang, bang. Chen Zhao was slapped to the ground. At the same time, the tentacles smashed the ground continuously. Samantha and Hepri's faces were pale. Chen Zhao should have died under that kind of destructive attack, right? Suddenly, Aqualati Gisli's head deformed. Something sharp seemed to be trying to drill out of his head. Break! Aqualati Gisli's head exploded in a shower of blood. Chen Zhao looked at Aqualati Gisli's body. He had just drilled directly into Aqualati Gisli's mouth and destroyed his bodily functions from the inside. Samantha clutched his chest and looked at Qin Zhao, who was floating in the air not far away. Was this really the world he knew? Qin Zhao furrowed his brows. His face was still filled with coldness. It wasn't because he had killed Aqualotti. It was because this wasn't the real Aqualotti. The great North Sea demon shouldn't be this weak, right? Also, how could such a coward launch such a suicidal attack at him? Moreover, since Aqualotti's abnormality, Qin Zhao realized that there weren't any demons around. There were only him, Aqualotti, Samantha, and Huperi. This wasn't the real world. His senses weren't wrong. This was the real world. Suddenly, the wind blew again. The mist moved again. Just then, a cold light pierced through the mist. It went straight for Qin Zhao's head. Qin Zhao tilted his head to avoid it. At the same time, he reached out to grab something behind the mist. It wasn't a thing, it was just a person. This was a knight whose entire body was adorned with exquisite patterns. At least that was what he was wearing. The knight swung his sword, wanting to kill Qin Zhao. But before that, Qin Zhao had already crushed his head. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes. There were actually hundreds of knights within the range of his domain. To be precise, he was a magic knight. Their bodies were covered with a large amount of magic. Qin Zhao looked at the blood on his hand. It was warm and not fake. But why? These magic knights didn't give Qin Zhao too much trouble. Behind these magic knights, there were also a few witches who blessed them. Qin Zhao ended the battle in a very short time. The wind started to move again, bringing along the mist. Qin Zhao's pocket world didn't sense any enemies. At the very least, it was not within the scope of the small world. Qin Zhao was surprised. Was it over? Suddenly, he felt countless auras appear above his head. Qin Zhao looked up. His eyes could not see through the mist, but above the mist there seemed to be countless colorful spots of light flashing. Furthermore, those colorful specks of light were like a galaxy embellished with stars, lining up in the sky for thousands of meters. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out of Qin Zhao's eyes. Qin Zhao was too familiar with this attack. Lilith of the Thousand Hands. Lilith, who had already died in Qin Zhao's hands. Lilith, who had countless hands as wings. Lilith, who could release countless spells at the same time. Qin Zhao frowned. Why would someone who had already died in his hands appear before him again? Had the escaped Lilith of the Holy Light and Elemental Lilith revived her? Qin Zhao had devoured Lilith of the Dark and found information about Nirvana from her memories. Like the original Lilith, only other Nirvana witches could inherit the characteristics of Nirvana. So, the Lilith that Qin Zhao had killed shouldn't be able to revive. Suddenly, a beam of white light wrapped around Qin Zhao, a binding spell of the holy light element. The moment Qin Zhao was bound, countless spells fell. Samantha and Huperi saw the most beautiful fireworks display in their lives. It was too beautiful. It was more splendid and dazzling than any known fireworks display. However, behind the beauty, it was filled with fatal danger. Ignoring the spells falling on him, Qin Zhao charged at the Lilith of the Thousand Hands in the sky. Qin Zhao was too familiar with this enemy, but they didn't learn their lesson. After Qin Zhao tore the first Lilith into pieces, Qin Zhao found the second Lilith hidden in the mist. She didn't learn her lesson either. Qin Zhao did what he couldn't do the first time. Last time, Lilith had escaped, but this time she didn't choose to run. But Qin Zhao didn't feel good. First, it was Aqualotti Gisli. Then it was the knights that looked like they were from the Middle Ages. Now it was Lilith. Lilith only had Lilith of the Holy Light and Lilith of the Thousand Hands. Lilith didn't have nothingness, enhancement, assassin, elemental, or darkness. What did this mean? The wind blew again, and the mist surged. Again. This time, there was quite a lot of mist. Qin Zhao could see the sea beyond the coastline. However, the sea wasn't calm. There was a fleet on the surface. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. The leading aircraft carrier. No, they should have sunk already. How could they appear before him? Demi Sonnenfeld had said before, because of Bermuda's operations, the number of ships and victims had increased in the past 2 years. It had triggered the American government, so they'd sent a fleet. But the fleet had also been wiped out. Why did the fleet that had sunk once again appear in front of him? Whoosh! More than a dozen planes flew over his head. Boom, 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 the attack came. Chun Zhao was locked on. All the attacks landed on his head. Samantha and Huperi exchanged glances. What's going on? First it's magic, and now it's a modern army? Is this fleet created by magic? Maybe. Forget it. Let's not care. We can't participate anyway. Whether it's magic or a modern army, it's fatal to us. That guy's a monster. He doesn't even care when a missile lands on his head. Chapter 2543. Only monsters would step into this place. That doesn't include us, Hepeli said. Hepeli said, those 2 guys have been plotting this for a long time. Everything was planned by them. Right now, Chun Zhao was hovering in the air. The missiles and machine gun bullets landed on him, but they didn't hurt him at all. Chun Zhao looked down at everything below him. Suddenly he had an idea. He flew into the sky. Meteor. 20 minutes later, a meteor streaked across the sky. The next moment, a light source that looked like a small sun appeared on the coastline. The small sun created huge waves. The fleet was swallowed by the waves in the blink of an eye. 1/10 of Demon Island disappeared completely. A circular crater was left at the edge. All the mist on the island was instantly dispersed, and all the trees were uprooted. Samantha and Hepeli, who were at the entrance, were sent flying by the terrifying impact. Samantha and Hepeli were at the higher ground, so the impact was the least. But the shock wave was still very terrifying. When the 2, bleeding, crawled to the entrance, they realized that Chun Zhao had returned. When he looked at the Demon Island again, he saw that it had already changed completely. Both of them were already pale with fright. What happened just now? Did they use nuclear weapons? You're really lucky, Chun Zhao said, looking at the bleeding duo. Not as lucky as you, Samantha said angrily. Chun Zhao suddenly had an idea. He left the entrance again. Still not back to normal? Chun Zhao had thought that everything would return to normal after dispersing the fog. But the result wasn't what he wanted. Was the destruction not thorough enough? Or did he not find the key point? Just then, countless ships appeared on the sea. This was also a fleet, but this fleet was different from the previous one, because the fleet that appeared this time was a fleet of wooden sailboats. Moreover, their flags were also very strange. A while later, the fleet docked. Large numbers of soldiers rushed down from the ships. They wore chainmail or leather armor and held swords in their hands. Chun Zhao floated in the air. These people couldn't do anything. They could only shoot with arrows, but they still couldn't reach Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao looked at the soldiers, who seemed to have come from the medieval era. Chun Zhao pondered. He didn't fight back. They couldn't attack him anyway. Suddenly, Chun Zhao's vision blurred. The next moment, a black shadow shrouded over. Chun Zhao looked up. Bang! A huge tentacle covered his face. Chun Zhao jumped up and roared, Aqualati, I'm going to kill you again. Wait, Chun, I didn't do it on purpose. Aqualati Gisli was shocked and quickly explained, You suddenly appeared in my attack range. Why are you still alive? Didn't I kill you? Chun Zhao looked at Aqualati Gisli with an unfriendly expression. How many times did it take you to find a way? Aqualati Gisli asked. Answer me first. What happened to me just now? How long did I disappear for? Maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Earlier, you were still at the cave halfway up the mountain. Then, you suddenly appeared in my attack range. I don't know how I escaped that situation, Chun Zhao said. There must be an enemy that you can't defeat in a short time. I know it must be me who helped you last for half an hour, right? You mean as long as I can hold on for half an hour, I'll be able to get out of there? Yes. Aqualati Gisli nodded. but he was more interested in another question. Were you attacked by me for half an hour, and then you couldn't do anything to me? What about you? Did you meet me? Of course, I killed you, Akwalati Gasley said. Oh, really? Qin Zhao chuckled. What skills did I use? Didn't you just fight hand to hand? Your fists didn't hurt at all. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. The enemies I encounter in that state are random, or controlled by someone, or is it prearranged? I'm just guessing. When I was serving under Tajimas in the past, I came into contact with the people who attacked Demon Island. Unfortunately, I met some of them just now, Tajimas said with a smile on his face. What exactly happened? I told you, Tajimas has a divine artifact. Get to the point. This divine artifact can record every enemy that attacks Demon Island, Akwalati Gasley said. Akwalati Gasley said, It's like some clips and then put me or you into this clip. I just held on for 30 minutes, and after I came out I realized something. This recorded clip of the enemy is long. It's 30 minutes. I thought I traveled through time, Qin Zhao said. But thinking about it carefully, he knew that it was impossible. At least, Chen Zhao didn't think that Leviathan Aberran Tajimas didn't have this ability. Even God might not have this ability. In fact, Akwalati Gasley was also very glad. Luckily, he hadn't encountered Chen Zhao's scene. Otherwise, he might really have been killed by Qin Zhao. After all, Chen Zhao's first sentence was that he would kill him again. Clearly, Chen Zhao had encountered him in a scene, and he'd even killed him. Suddenly, both Qin Zhao and Akwalati Gasley felt an oppressive feeling from above. Chen Zhao and Akwalati Gasley immediately looked up at the sky. A meteor fell from the sky. Qin Zhao's eyes widened. The meteor moved faster and faster, heading straight for Akwalati Gasley. Shrink! Hurry! I can't do it, Akwalati Gasley said, terrified. Chen Zhao suddenly grabbed Akwalati Gasley's tentacle and tossed it. The moment Akwalati Gasley was tossed out, the meteorite fell where Akwalati Gasley had been. Instantly, a huge impact swept in all directions. All the plants were instantly flattened. Qin Zhao was naturally in the center of the impact and was sent flying by the shockwave. Akwalati Gasley climbed back up. He saw the terrifying impact. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Which idiot did Tajimas steal this crazy skill from? Akwalati Gasley roared. Just then, 100-meter-tall demon climbed out of the huge crater created by the impact. The demon's head looked like a goat, but from the neck down, it was completely different from a harmless goat. However, as soon as it came out, it vomited a mouthful of blood. Half of its body was burnt. Chapter 2544. Damn, why is it like this? Why is it like this? The huge demon stood where he was. The charred parts on his body were fading away, replaced by new skin. He could feel that he'd copied Chen Zhao's constitution and skill. But why wasn't Chen Zhao injured at all when he used this move? But he'd almost fallen to his death when he used this move. His move wasn't as powerful as Chen Zhao's. But why was he injured so much? Just then, Qin Zhao arrived before the huge demon. You're Leviathan Aberran Tajimas? Leviathan Aberran Tajimas stared at Qin Zhao hatefully. Why can you use this move without getting hurt, but I can't? Did you copy my constitution? Chen Zhao chuckled. Was it so easy to copy his constitution? Perhaps the most basic constitution could be copied. But the most basic constitution was what Chen Zhao had obtained when he'd first taken the perfect strength potion. Chen Zhao believed that with Leviathan's power, he could copy this constitution. But what about the others? The Rage Blood and Gluttony bloodline definitely couldn't be copied, because these two were from the same bloodline as Leviathan, the 7 Sin Demon Kings. He could probably copy the Eye of Power too and double his own strength. This was a divine power, but it wasn't too high level. He definitely couldn't copy Giant Spirit transformation, Body double and spells return to one. Body double was a high-level spell that Old Turtle had taught him personally. At first, Chen Zhao had only learned the simplified version. Later, when he was strong enough, he learned the complete version. Giant spirit transformation was something he'd created later. It could even be said to be one of the top spells Chen Zhao had learned. The 10,000 techniques return to one required one to learn the avatar technique in order to use it. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to use the 10,000 techniques return to one alone. Then there was the key's evolution for Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao had always felt that the key was the highest level of his power system. So, Chen Zhao didn't think that Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas could copy the key's evolution for his constitution. In other words, Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas could only copy the basics of Chen Zhao's basics. As for Chen Zhao's other spells, Chen Zhao didn't have any objections. After all of Chen Zhao's combat power and main attacks were based on his own power. He couldn't replicate all of his abilities and bloodline, so he couldn't use those moves. Take Meteor, for example. Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis had already tasted the bitter fruit. Was it that easy to release a meteor? Without a strong enough physique, it was no different from suicide. But even Chen Zhao had to admit that this guy's head was really hard. Even if he only copied his basic physique, it would be good if his physique could be doubled. However, he did not fall to his death. It could be seen that his own foundation was not bad. However, it had to be said that the power of the meteor cast by Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas was incredible. It was much weaker than Chen Zhao's complete version. It was less than 1/10 of Chen Zhao's. But even so, the power was still considerable. And at that time his target was Aqualati Gasly. If Aqualati Gisli took the full blow, he would probably be killed in seconds. The destructive power of a meteor was similar to that of a neutron star. The closer it was to the center, the more terrifying it was. Suddenly, Aqualati Gisli's huge tentacle whipped Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas's huge body flew toward Chen Zhao. He didn't hold back at all. Level 3 of the primordial regression technique. Bang! Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas was sent flying by Chen Zhao's punch. His chest and right shoulder completely disappeared. But soon, a green aura emerged from the broken part of his shoulder. Then it healed at an astonishing speed. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. Fuck, his life force had been copied. How could this be? Isn't this too heaven-defying? Life force could be copied? Aqualati, the Leviathan bloodline, can copy life force. Yes, but only once. In fact, all the same abilities, spells, and supernatural powers can only be copied once. He should have used up the number of times he could copy life force. He copied my life force. When he recovered, I felt it. It was exactly the same as my life force. Him? Copied yours? Is he crazy? You're just a human. No matter how strong you are, you're still a human, Aqualati Gisli exclaimed. Aqualati, you're still so stupid. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas stood up again. Have you forgotten my ability? I can see the magic power and life force of others at a glance. Do you think I don't know what's going on with the person I'm copying? Aqualati Gisli turned to Chen Zhao. Do you have more life force than a normal person? Chen Zhao glanced at Aqualati Gisli and said indifferently, a little more. Whatever, it doesn't matter, Aqualati Gisli said. Besides, the more vitality he has, the more I can get, said Aqualati Gisli. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas spread his hands. 200-meter-long black swords appeared in his hands. Aqualati Gisli, are you sure you can beat me? I'm not sure, Aqualati Gisli said honestly, but I have no other way out now. He was very free now. He was going to die anyway. If he took the risk, he might become a motorcycle. If I didn't want to get rid of your slavery, I wouldn't have lost 1,000 years of life force. And if I didn't lose 1,000 years of life force, I wouldn't come here to fight you. then you can only blame your stupidity. As Leviathan Aberontagemus spoke, his arm suddenly slashed toward Aquilati Gisli, who was thousands of meters away. Leviathan Aberontagemus' arm turned into a tentacle and kept extending outwards. The giant black sword had already appeared above Aquilati Gisli's head. Shocked, Aquilati Gisli hurriedly dodged Leviathan Aberontagemus' attack. Clearly, Leviathan Aberontagemus had copied his ability. But just then, Leviathan Aberontagemus opened his mouth and spat out a jet of ink. The ink poison sprayed directly on Aquilati Gisli's body. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 2545. Of course, the ink poison was ineffective against Aquilati Gisli. After all, it was a copy of Aquilati Gisli's skill. Aquilati Gisli had absolute immunity and resistance. But the ink poison didn't rely on poison to defeat the enemy. When Aquilati Gisli was covered by the ink poison, tentacles began to emerge from his body. The tentacles didn't attach themselves to Aquilati Gisli's body. Instead, they covered the surface of the ink poison. Is that weird? I can even copy your domain, can I? Leviathan Aberontagemus said proudly. The tentacles that grew out of Aquilati Gisli's body were wrapping around him. Aquilati Gisli struggled with all his might, but he knew his own strength. This was his territory, the tentacle territory. The territory couldn't be disintegrated. Aquilati Gisli's territory was very special. His territory didn't move with him. It was determined by the range of his ink poison. The number of ink poison he spat out would determine the range it covered, and the tentacles would extend from it. As long as he couldn't get rid of the ink poison on him, he couldn't get rid of the tentacle territory. So he had to get to the seaside and let the seawater wash away the ink poison. Leviathan Aberon's attention returned to Qin Zhao. Who exactly are you? Why is my copy of you so ineffective? Leviathan Aberontagemus couldn't confirm Qin Zhao's identity, because Qin Zhao's aura was very special. Judging from the aura, he should be human, but he had the smell of a demon. The smell was also very strange. It was like the blood of gluttony, but also like the blood of anger. But that was impossible, because of the 7 demon kings. Apart from Satan, there were no subordinates. The subordinates of the other 6 demon kings couldn't mix. The subordinates of the 6 demon kings could mix with other demon bloodlines. For example, Beelzebub, Zophi, and Iris. One was a subordinate of gluttony, and the other was a dragon. But Beelzebub, Zophi, couldn't mix with the other 6 demon kings to produce offspring. That was why Leviathan Aberontagemus found it strange that Qin Zhao's aura was so complicated. It's not bad, Qin Zhao said. You've stolen a lot from me. Of course, Leviathan Aberontagemus knew. His constitution had improved, and secondly, he had stolen Qin Zhao's life force. Not even a great lord had ever seen such a massive amount of life force. But Qin Zhao's vitality was truly shocking. It was so huge that it made people's hair stand on end. It was also terrifying. What is this human in front of me? Was he really human? Right now. Qin Zhao had already activated the 3rd level of the primordial regression technique. Leviathan Aberontagemus suddenly swung his 2 swords and attacked Qin Zhao. Leviathan Aberontagemus could sense the enemy's strength, magic, and even life force. However, he could only sense basic attributes. Most of Qin Zhao's attributes were stacked with skills. Qin Zhao suddenly moved, turning into a stream of light. He directly crashed into the center of the 2 crossed swords. Quang! The 2 giant swords were immediately broken. Qin Zhao grabbed the hilts of the 2 broken swords and slashed at Leviathan Aberontagemus. Hiss! Leviathan Aberontagemus's head flew into the air. Everything had happened too quickly. Leviathan Aberontagemus couldn't react at all. Leviathan Aberontagemus had obtained the same life force as Qin Zhao. Normal attacks were useless against him. If he attacked, he would kill. Qin Zhao started with his own weakness. After cutting off his head, Qin Zhao didn't believe that he could survive. But just when Qin Zhao thought the battle was over, a body grew out of Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis's head. The headless body also grew out a head. Fuck, you can do this too. This is the undead Eurobody. I copied this spell from an Easterner. I also learned this skill, Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis said. No matter which part of my body you cut off, I can regrow it completely. Originally, this ability had a huge flaw, and that was that it required a huge amount of life force. Even I didn't dare to use this ability casually, but the life force I copied from you solved this problem for me. Qin Zhao stopped attacking. Rubbing his chin, he pondered. Are you at your wit's end? Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis grinned. I admit that you're strong, even stronger than me, but sometimes being strong won't let you win. Although he said it was easy, he knew how terrifying this human was. He'd killed him instantly and decapitated him. Qin Zhao had killed him instantly and decapitated him. If he didn't have the undead Eurobody and copied the opponent's life force, this would solve his problem of being killed instantly to a large extent. He would probably have a headache now, wondering how to face an enemy like this. Qin Zhao's overwhelming power made him not dare to underestimate him at all. Leave now. I don't have any conflict of interest with you, Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis said. You're right. Qin Zhao nodded. How about this? Give me this island and leave the body behind. Then we'll call it a day. How about that? Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis's expression changed involuntarily. Looks like we'll have to fight to the end of our lives. Although Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis was confident that his undying Eurobody could make him almost immortal, he was not confident that he could survive. But the opponent's life force was also very strong. With such a strong life force, the opponent definitely had a similar undead body, and it was an ability that he couldn't copy. At least, the undead Eurobody could be copied, but the opponent's similar skill couldn't be copied. This meant that the opponent's similar skill level was very high, plus the opponent's terrifying lethality. The ability to kill him instantly made him want to turn and run. Of course, it was never his habit to sit still and wait for death to come. Giving up on the battle and choosing to run was a choice he'd make in a desperate situation. He wasn't in that situation yet. Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis took a deep breath. He grabbed a few pieces of flesh from his body and threw them on the ground. Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis's clones appeared on the battlefield one by one. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2546. There were 5 Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis clones at the scene, plus the clone that Qin Zhao had cut off his head and his original body. This meant that there were 7 Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis on the battlefield. Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis frowned. He realized that 2 clones were missing from the battlefield. He'd thrown out 7 pieces of his flesh, but there were only 5 clones. Just then, Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis saw Aqualati Gisli's tentacles. The 2 missing pieces of flesh were Aqualati Gisli's doing. Aqualati Gisli had rushed into the sea to take a bath, then returned to the battlefield. This made Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis furious. Aqualati Gisli, however, was overjoyed. Tegmis, continue. Your flesh is surprisingly delicious, Aqualati Gisli said. Aqualati Gethli had gained a long-lost vitality from the flesh and blood of Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis. It was more delicious than any delicacy. Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis' anger was mixed with bewilderment and even fear. You don't have the ability to obtain life force by devouring flesh. How did you do it? In the past 1,000 years, I've tried to learn other abilities to obtain life force and extend my life, but all of them failed. In the past 200 years, I've come into contact with science, biology, cytology, life science, and genetics. I've obtained 4 degrees. In my early years, I used my theoretical knowledge to create a laboratory and used myself as an experiment subject. At first, I sliced myself up and studied myself. Later, I taught students and trained a large group of human students. I let them study me. After decades of research, I finally came to the conclusion that the most effective and possible way for me to truly extend my life is you. Me? Leviathan Abhan Tajimis narrowed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Anyway, he sensed that Aquilati Gisli's research wasn't that simple. Do you remember the drop of blood you left in my body when you enslaved me? That drop of blood is still there, but that drop of blood has almost fused with me. The vitality contained in this drop of blood is greater than my own, but no matter how great it is, there will still be a time when it dries up. Now this drop of blood has dried up, but you still have a lot of it. Every piece of your flesh and every drop of blood can bring me vitality. Aquilati Gisli looked at Chen Zhao. Chun, you can tear him apart. I'll take care of every piece of his flesh. He won't have any more clones. Anger and fear erupted from Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis' eyes. Chen Zhao couldn't help but laugh. All the problems were no longer problems. You owe me, and now I'm here to take it back, Aquilati Gisli said. I'll kill you. Then this problem does not exist. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis said coldly, kill him. Each of Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis' doppelgangers possessed the same power as the main body. Apart from the distribution of vitality and the fact that they shared the same mind, they were actually no different from the original body. This ability was almost the same as the complete version of Chen Zhao's clone. The difference was that Chen Zhao's clone relied on his own power to maintain itself. As long as the spell was removed, the clone would disappear too. On the other hand, Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis' clone ability relied on vitality to maintain itself. The clone would only disappear when the vitality was used up. Of course, Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis could retrieve these clones. Therefore, even if it was only a clone with a tiny portion of vitality, it could still crush Aquilati Gisli. A pair of black swords appeared in the clone's palms. He slashed at Aquilati Gisli. Just then, Aquilati Gisli stood still. His body suddenly collapsed into ink. Several mountains were dyed black by the ink. Do you think this liquefaction can prevent your death? Leviathan Abhan Tajimis' clone said in a cold tone. The twin swords of Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis' clone ignited in flames. He walked to the center of the ink and stabbed the flaming twin swords into the ground. Instantly, a large amount of ink evaporated. At this rate, it wouldn't take long for all the ink that Aquilati Gisli had turned into to evaporate. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of thin tentacles shot out of the ink. These tentacles wrapped around Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis' clone. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis immediately waved his swords and cut off tens of thousands of tentacles. However, in the next moment, more tentacles wrapped around Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis. A human figure appeared in the ink and shouted at Chen Zhao, "Chen, help me kill him!" The other Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis clones immediately stood in front of Chen Zhao. However, Chen Zhao didn't care how many Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis were in front of him. He turned into energy. Any clone that dared to stand in front of him would be pierced. Chen Zhao rushed to the clone that was temporarily restrained by Aquilati Gisli. Dig out the piece of flesh in his chest. That's the core. The clone was now completely locked by Aquilati Gisli. It couldn't even struggle. Aquilati Gisli was giving it his all. It was true that he couldn't defeat Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis. Even a doppelganger could make him flustered. But it wasn't like he hadn't developed his own moves over the years. Moreover, he didn't need to be afraid of Leviathan Aberrant Tajimis' replication ability. Chen Zhao dug out the piece of flesh in the clone's chest. The clone's core wasn't his brain, heart, or other organs. It was the piece of flesh that came from his original body. His current body was an extension of that piece of flesh. All of his life force spread out from the flesh. As Chun Zhao grabbed a piece of flesh, he threw it onto the ink on the ground. Soon, the flesh sank into the ink. Subsequently, the doppelganger controlled by Aqualati Gisli also collapsed and dissipated. Chun Zhao looked back at the clones of Leviathan, Aberkan, Tegemus. Chapter 2547. Big Trouble. Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus' expression changed drastically. If it was just Chun Zhao, he wouldn't be afraid, even if he was wary. At the same time, if it was just Aqualati Gisli, he wouldn't even need to be wary. But if the two of them were together, they would be too much of a threat to him. He couldn't enter Aqualati Gisli's range. Otherwise, once they were controlled by him, both the main body and the doppelganger would not be able to escape death. Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus held his breath and concentrated, thinking of a countermeasure. He had many spells, but most of them weren't suitable for the current situation. Suddenly, one of Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus' doppelgangers began to shrink. Soon, it was the size of an insect. Chun Zhao moved. Suddenly, he appeared before the shrunken Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus and grabbed it. What are you thinking? Do you really think you can reduce the area of attack by shrinking? For people at their level, the small world could directly capture the enemy's position and lock onto them in the most precise way. If the enemy was bigger, it would indeed be easier to attack. But if they shrank when they didn't have an advantage in speed and strength, the result would be the same as Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus. Chun Zhao grabbed it in his hand. Chun Zhao pinched the clone to death and tossed it to Aqualati Gisli. The other clones of Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus didn't look too good. Clearly, they'd thought too simply. Chun Zhao was far more difficult to deal with than they'd imagined. Go restrain Aqualati, we'll seal him. Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus communicated with each other. They didn't rely on sound to communicate. Instead, they communicated through mental resonance. The other Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus clones nodded. This human was far more difficult to deal with than they'd expected. In the past, when humans couldn't deal with them, they always liked to use seals. This was a very helpless choice. But now they had to use this passive method. Among the many spells that Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus had mastered, there was no lack of sealing magic. After Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gisli destroyed 2 of the clones, Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus took the risk to add 5 more. There were a total of 10 original bodies and clones. 1 went to restrain Aqualati Gisli, while the other 9 surrounded Chun Zhao. Just then, Chun Zhao noticed that there was something wrong with their positions. Chun Zhao did not like the feeling of being surrounded by enemies from all directions. Chun, be careful. They have a lot of seals. They're going too. Before Aqualati Gisli could finish, a clone of Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus approached him and interrupted him. It's too late. The 9 Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus said coldly at the same time. At that moment, the 9 Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus clones erupted with powerful magic power at the same time. Seeing this, Chun Zhao immediately tried to break through. But in the next instant, a terrifying force descended from the sky. She slapped him to the ground. A gigantic magic array appeared in the sky. Waves of frightening power burst forth from the magic array. It kept pressuring Chun Zhao below. Chun Zhao endured the immense pressure. The power kept increasing. At first, it was not unbearable, but as time passed, the power grew stronger and stronger. A magic array also appeared on the ground. The power above seemed to want to press Chun Zhao into the magic array on the ground. Chun Zhao had to fly into the air. Come on, Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus said. This guy is too strong. Without sealing spells, I really don't know how to deal with this guy. Chun Zhao suddenly charged toward the Leviathan Aberkan Tegemus clone in front of him. However, the same power immediately appeared before the Leviathan Aberkan clone and forced Chun Zhao back. Big trouble. Chun Zhao did not plan on being sealed. Chun Zhao looked into the distance. Aqualati Gisli was also being held up by a clone. He could not escape at all. Chen Zhao took a deep breath and crossed his palms. Neutron star. He could not count on anyone else now. Chen Zhao did not want to give up, so he could only save himself. What's that move? I didn't copy it. I don't know. It can't be copied. It must be a top-level spell. Let's be careful. Both the original body and the clone knew how difficult this human was. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas knew that the key to this battle was to seal Chen Zhao. As long as he could successfully seal Chen Zhao, everything would be fine. But if he failed, only death awaited them. Chen Zhao had to endure the immense pressure from the seal. The power that fell from above continued to stack up. Chen Zhao did not just have to resist the power falling from the sky. He also had to compress the air so that Neutron Star would not be wasted. Moreover, if Neutron Star was interrupted, even if the half-finished product exploded in front of him, it would still cause great damage to him. This move almost belonged to the kind of killing move where it was either you die or I die. It was powerful, but if it failed, the backlash would be extremely serious. Ah! Chen Zhao roared. He had not gone all out in a long time. He felt all the pores on his body open up. The power was released bit by bit. The power above his head kept increasing. At the same time, he had to maintain Neutron Star's power too. Chen Zhao was really using all his strength now. His body started turning red. Then the Nirvana flame suddenly started burning on him. Neutron Star was not only absorbing the surrounding air, but also the Nirvana flame. Every minute was a test for Chen Zhao. No, every second. But Chen Zhao was not the only one who felt pressure. Outside, Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas and his 8 doppelgangers also felt tremendous pressure. Their magic power was not limitless. But to maintain the seal, or rather, to seal Chen Zhao, it was more difficult than they had imagined. I need more clones. My magic power is about to be used up. I also need a doppelganger to take my place, Yuzichin said. I also need one here. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas' main body could only release magic power while enduring the pain to replace 3 clones. Let's work harder. He shouldn't be able to last long. 9 Heaven's God King. Chapter 2548. It was done. Suddenly, a dark golden ball of light shot toward the Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas clone in front of Chen Zhao. The dark golden ball streaked through the air at an extreme speed. Moreover, it passed through the barrier in front of Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas clone without any hindrance. Pop! The moment the dark golden ball of light came into contact with Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas avatar, the Leviathan Abhan Tajimas avatar exploded. Chen Zhao snapped his fingers. The structure of the neutron star collapsed instantly. Hundreds of millions of tons of matter spread out. At the same time, the compressed nirvana flames also spread out. The body of Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas clone disintegrated in an instant. His body didn't shatter. Instead, he was molecularized. A ball of light spread out at a speed of 1/10,000th of a second. Then there were the Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas clones on the left and right. Half of the bodies of the 2 clones were affected, and then the other half of their bodies disappeared. The diameter of the ball instantly reached close to 1 meter, but it didn't continue spreading. Instead, it was replaced by a shockwave that was obviously much weaker, but had a wider range. Of the 5 clones on the left, 1 was vaporized, 2 were affected by the ball of light, and the other 2 were sent flying by the shockwave. The nearly perfect formation collapsed in an instant. *T. Leviathan Aberrant Tajimas exclaimed. Chen Zhao was also ready. The moment the 5 clones left the casting position of the magic formation, Chen Zhao activated his power. Chen Zhao punched at the power falling from above. Boom! The 2 powers collided instantly. Both of them spread out their powers evenly. If it was before, the magic formation could dissolve 90% of the power. Then the 9 clones and the 9 clones would share the remaining power. But now, the 5 clones had left the magic formation. The remaining 3 clones, and one of the clones would have to share all the power. Bang! The 2 clones exploded on the spot. Heavily injured by the power, 1 clone and one of the clones were sent flying. Qin Zhao didn't have time to catch his breath. His body turned into energy, and he killed the Leviathan Aberran Tegemus clone that was fighting with Aqualati Geisli. "Don't give him a chance to breathe," Aqualati Geisli roared. For the past 20 minutes or so, he had been suppressed by Leviathan Aberran Tegemus. It was too stifling. However, at that time he was able to keep his composure and did not panic excessively. He was waiting for Chen Zhao's counterattack. He knew that Chen Zhao wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. As expected, Chen Zhao didn't disappoint him. Aqualati Geisli pounced on a Leviathan Aberran Tegemus clone whose body had been half destroyed by Chen Zhao's neutron star. It directly dug out that piece of flesh from his body and swallowed it. At this moment, the other heavily injured Leviathan Aberran Tegemus stood up with great difficulty. But in the next moment, Aqualati Geisli didn't wait to digest the previous food and pounced on the clone again. Aqualati Geisli didn't try to hide this time. Instead, he used his huge body to overwhelm his opponent. There were also 2 clones whose bodies had half disappeared. Aqualati Geisli used his tentacles to drag the 2 defenseless Leviathan Aberran Tegemus clones in front of him. As he devoured more and more of Leviathan Aberran Tegemus flesh, he could feel his life force becoming stronger and stronger. On the other hand, Chen Zhao went directly to Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' main body. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, went straight to Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' main body. But when he saw Chen Zhao pounce on him, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Chen Zhao was definitely the scariest enemy he had ever met. But when he saw Chen Zhao pounce on him, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus punched the mountain wall with his arm. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's arm slammed against the mountain wall. Chen Zhao thought it was some kind of sound wave attack from Leviathan Aberran Tegemus. So, Chen Zhao paused his attack and switched to defense. After all, not long ago, he had almost lost his life because of his carelessness. But it seemed like he was overthinking. This wasn't a magic attack. It was a signal. Just then, the ground started cracking open. A huge meatball charged out of the crack. As soon as the meatball saw Chen Zhao, it opened its mouth and bit at him. While biting, it also unleashed a terrifying mental attack on Chen Zhao. Otherworldly God. Chen Zhao punched, and the otherworldly god's body was torn into pieces. At the same time, he grabbed the otherworldly god's heart and crushed it. A year ago, Chen Zhao might have had a headache over the otherworldly god's strength. But now, this otherworldly god couldn't even be arrogant for a second before Chen Zhao. Profound attack? It couldn't even affect Chen Zhao a year ago, let alone now. Just when Chen Zhao thought this was Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' final struggle, more otherworldly gods charged out of the crack. These otherworldly gods were rather fearless. At least, they felt that Chen Zhao was easy to bully. So the first thing they did was attack Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao didn't like being surrounded like this. Their attacks were meaningless, but they hindered Chen Zhao. "Chen, stop those otherworldly gods!" Aqualati Geisli shouted. "They're good stuff." Good stuff? Chen Zhao didn't think they were good stuff. They are raised by Tegemus. Each of them has a considerable amount of vitality, and they can be obtained by eating them. Chen Zhao's expression changed slightly, but he looked at Leviathan Aberran Tegemus again. "You're not afraid that he'll run?" "He can't," Aqualati Geisli said confidently. Aqualati Geisli said confidently. Although this guy is insidious and despicable, he did something that he regretted for the rest of his life. He completely integrated his domain with Devil Island. Although this gave him great power, it also made him unable to leave Devil Island for the rest of his life. At this moment, More than a dozen otherworldly gods had already fled. Most of them chose to attack Qin Zhao, but a large portion of otherworldly gods weren't stupid. They didn't know how strong Qin Zhao was. They just wanted to escape. There were also many otherworldly gods with low intelligence. They didn't attack Qin Zhao, but they paced around the island. Qin Zhao was still hesitant. Should he deal with Leviathan Aberran Tegemus first? Or should he control these otherworldly gods first? As for the otherworldly gods that had escaped, Qin Zhao didn't care at all. There were plenty of tall people in the world. He didn't have to worry about them. 9 Heaven's God King. Chapter 2549. Leviathan Abraham Tegmis had raised too many otherworldly gods. There were both mature and young ones. There were countless of them, big and small. You catch these otherworldly gods, Qin Zhao said. I'll deal with Leviathan Aberran Tegemus. Qin Zhao really wasn't suitable to deal with these otherworldly gods. Leviathan Abraham Tegmis really agreed to Qin Zhao's conditions. Everything else was fine, but he couldn't give Demon Island to anyone else. This was his territory. He couldn't escape either. Come, I'll use your flesh and blood to create a clone. Qin Zhao stared at Leviathan Aberran Tegemus fiercely. Why did Leviathan Abraham Tegmis release all the otherworldly gods he had reared? He wanted them to delay Qin Zhao and Aqualadi's awkward operation. He wanted to think of a way to deal with Qin Zhao, but Qin Zhao didn't give him a chance to think. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus tore off 2 pieces of flesh from his body and turned them into clones. Stop him! However, how much time could 2 doppelgangers buy him? It would probably buy him about 10 seconds of time. Then 2 pieces of his flesh were thrown to Aqualadi Gisli. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' expression changed again. But seeing that Qin Zhao was getting closer, Leviathan Aberran Tegemus could only give it his all. Leviathan Aberran Tegmis suddenly took out a long golden needle. This needle was only a meter long. In front of Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' huge body, it was almost the size of a pin. The moment Leviathan Aberran Tegmis took out the pin, he didn't change for the worse. Instead, he became excited. I've been waiting for this. Qin Zhao's body suddenly turned into energy. He pounced at Leviathan's palm. Whoosh! Leviathan Aberran Tegemus' palm was pierced through. Qin Zhao had already grabbed the pin. But to Leviathan Aberran Tegmis, it was a big deal. But to Qin Zhao, it was a spearhead. Qin Zhao wasn't in a hurry to kill Leviathan Aberran because he was waiting for him to take out the divine artifact. Leviathan Aberran Tegmis held a divine artifact in his hand. Qin Zhao believed that Leviathan Aberran Tegemus wouldn't hide the divine artifact when his life was in danger. Perhaps he didn't use it just now because this divine artifact had some limitations. Perhaps it was because he had just used it on himself, so there was a time limit. Or perhaps there were other conditions to use it. Give it back to me. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus was anxious. That was a divine artifact, his final trump card. Huh. Qin Zhao grinned at Leviathan Aberran Tegemus. You're about to die. Why are you still thinking about the divine artifact? It's such a waste to bury it with you. You should make the best use of it. Aqualadi, don't worry about those otherworldly gods. Get ready for a feast. Aqualadi Gisli's huge body rushed over. Usually he would wriggle slowly, but now he was charging over with all his strength. Aqualadi, I've enslaved you in the past, but I've never mistreated you. You've also broken free. If you want, I can let you devour half of my life force, but there's really no need for us to fight to the death. After all, there aren't many demons in this world, and there are even fewer who are qualified to talk to you. Aqualadi Gisli looked at Qin Zhao. He's right. I suddenly don't want to kill him anymore. Oh, then let him go, Qin Zhao replied in an equally serious tone. Okay. Just as Orqualadi Damned said yes, The huge tentacle had already slammed towards Leviathan Aberran Tegemus. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus immediately raised his sword and slashed. Aqualati Gisli's tentacle was cut off directly, but then Chen Zhao had already circled behind Leviathan Aberran Tegemus and struck the back of his head. Aqualati Gisli's other tentacles had already stretched out, binding Leviathan Aberran Tegemus like a rice dumpling. In terms of actual combat ability, Leviathan Aberran Tegemus was countless times stronger than Aqualati Gisli. But if Aqualati Gisli's tentacles controlled Leviathan Aberran Tegemus, the Leviathan would not be able to survive. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus definitely wouldn't be able to break free from Aqualati Gisli's restraints. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's head injury healed quickly, and he came back to his senses. But now he was tightly entangled by Aqualati Gisli. Aqualati, stop! By then, Aqualati Gisli had already used his suckers to tear off a piece of Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's flesh. Delicious, really delicious. This time, Leviathan Aberran Tegemus didn't have a chance to recover. Aqualati Gisli's tentacles drilled into Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's wound. Stop! Aqualati, I'm willing to accept your control. I'm willing to be your slave. Chen Zhao wiped his mouth. Aqualati, don't make it so bloody. It's disgusting. Aqualati Gisli stuffed Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's mouth. Will this reduce the disgust? Yes, a little better. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus didn't escape death in the end. The entire process lasted for 3 hours. Aqualati Gisli couldn't devour him directly. He needed time to digest. If he swallowed Leviathan Aberran Tegemus whole, he might even devour Aqualati Gisli instead. So, Aqualati Gisli needed to devour and digest a little. Of course, Leviathan Aberran Tegemus's pain and despair also lasted for 3 hours. Finally done, Aqualati Gisli transformed back into his human form. Who are you? Chen Zhao looked at the muscular man before him. Of course, I'm Aqualati Gisli. I'm full of vitality now. Can't I be a little extravagant? Change back to that old man's appearance. I'm not used to your current appearance, really not, Chen Zhao complained. Also, technically speaking, your life force was copied from me. You're wasting my life force. No, I'll beat you up if you don't. Let's do it. Aqualati Gisli turned back into an old man. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2550. How come there's only the 3 of you left in the psionic team? Chen Zhao looked at Toddy-Belster, Yanghua, and Acrobumin. Yang's eyes were filled with anger. Chen Zhao, can you explain why your battle affected us? Hiss! Chen Zhao's face was full of mockery. You think our battle affected you? I think you're a hindrance. Yanghua clenched his fists. He wanted to hit Chen Zhao. He knew he couldn't beat Chen Zhao, but he didn't care. He was just worried that if he did it himself, it would affect Toddy-Belster and his wife. He'd known in the past. At that time, he didn't think Chen Zhao was so strong that he couldn't surpass him. But now he finally understood how big the gap between him and Chen Zhao was. It was a gap that made him feel despair. In the past few hours, the battle between Chen Zhao, Leviathan Aberran Tegemus, and Aqualati Gisli, it was like a fight between gods. But it also made the mortals suffer. It was unreasonably terrifying. Leviathan Aberran Tegemus appeared like a meteor falling from the sky. It was his move that killed most of the psionic team on the beach. Toddy-Belster and Yanghua were protected by Acrobumin. Fortunately, Acrobumin was a fire dragon. They were also more than 10 kilometers away from the center of impact. So, they weren't in the first range of impact. But Acrobumin couldn't protect too many people. That was why only a dozen or so people managed to survive. But this wasn't the final result. The battle between the 3 monsters kept impacting them. In the end, only Toddy-Belster, Yanghua, and Acrobumin were left. The psionic team was almost completely wiped out. Akrabumon had been saved by Chen Zhao before. She'd thought that was Chen Zhao's full strength. But in the battle that followed, only then did she realize how terrifying Chen Zhao was. As a dragon, she was naturally much stronger than humans. Even her husband was much weaker than her. So, she had a natural sense of superiority. However, this sense of superiority was gone in front of Chen Zhao. I warned you a long time ago that this is not a place you should come to. But you came, and you even brought your wife. How brave! You even brought a household registered to die. You should thank me, Chen Zhao said mockingly. If I didn't come, you too would have died on the same day. Also, you should be thankful that you have a good elder. After all, you have someone to take care of you, but others don't. I don't need your care. Don't you need it? If you think that being saved by me will make you feel ashamed, you can go and die now. Yang Guo's face turned red and white. Yang Guo looked at Toddy Belster. She didn't speak to him, but turned around and left. Toddy Belster's heart had also trembled just now. He was really afraid that Chen Zhao would burn the bridge after crossing it. He had to admit that Chen Zhao had left a deep impression on him. It refreshed his understanding of power again and again. You have the bloodline of Leviathan now, right? Aqualati Gisli smiled bitterly. What are you thinking? How can the Demon King's bloodline be obtained by devouring? In hell, there are countless demons with the ability to devour, but I've never heard of anyone who can obtain the Demon King's bloodline through devouring. Can't I? What a pity, Chen Zhao said regretfully. I was quite jealous of one of Tajimis's spells, Chen Zhao said regretfully. I thought you might be able to get his spells. That's right. I only devoured his life force, not his magic or bloodline. Fundamentally speaking, Aqualati Gisli's combat ability hadn't improved, apart from his increased stamina. Originally, Aqualati Gisli's life was about to come to an end. This battle could be said to be his last resort. As his life force was about to run out, his combat ability would become weaker and weaker. But as he devoured Leviathan Abaran Tajimis' life force, he could only say that he had recovered to his peak state. This didn't mean that he could obtain Leviathan Abaran Tajimis' power. It did not mean that he could obtain the power of Leviathan Abaran Tajimis. What magic do you want from him? If possible, we can look in his library. I hope his library hasn't been destroyed, asked Aqualati ghastly. It's the move that allows two swords to appear. That's summoning magic. Summoning magic? Were those swords created by some kind of magic? Instead it was summoned? Yes, that spell is saint-level power. Legend has it that there is a holy realm. When a weapon has a soul, it is called a Holy Spirit weapon, and its soul will enter that holy realm, said Aqualati ghastly. Only those who are recognized by the Holy Spirit weapons can be summoned. In this world, no one can summon the same weapon. As long as the person recognized by the Holy Spirit weapon is alive, the Holy Spirit weapon will not be summoned by a second person. Did Tajimis summon a holy weapon as well? That's right. That pair of weapons is called the Black Lotus. Was the Black Lotus flower originally that big? No, the Holy Spirit weapon will automatically adjust its size according to the user's size. You know this spell. Do you know it? No, you don't even know how to do it. Chen Zhao immediately lost interest. Let's see if Tajimis' library has any texts about this spell, Aqualati ghastly said. But this spell doesn't mean anything to you, does it? The Black Lotus is one of the most powerful Holy Spirit weapons, but you can directly break the Black Lotus. The other Holy Spirit weapons are about the same to you. Even if you summon the strongest Holy Spirit weapon, I'm afraid it still won't be able to withstand your torment. It's not because the Holy Spirit weapon is powerful, Chen Zhao said calmly. The Black Lotus was Chen Zhao's style, so Chen Zhao really liked the Black Lotus and not other Holy Spirit weapons. When he heard Aqualati Ghastly say that in order to summon a Holy Spirit weapon, he first had to be recognized by the weapon. Qin Zhao almost lost interest. Chen Zhao felt that since he had broken the Black Lotus so many times, it was basically impossible for him to get its recognition, let alone summon it. As for other Holy Spirit weapons, Qin Zhao really wasn't interested, unless he could summon a weapon even cooler than the Black Lotus. Of course, it would be best if it was black. Chapter 2551. Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly came to the crack that had been opened earlier, but now the crack on the ground had been blocked by Aquality Ghastly with ink. It's a pity that many other worldly gods escaped earlier. How many are left? Not many, only 100 or so. Aquality Ghastly sighed. What a pity. Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly entered the crack. These otherworldly gods can be eaten directly? Obtain vitality? Yes. Even ordinary people can eat it? Yes, but ordinary people can only obtain very little vitality. They need to eat it for a long time to get some effect, Aquality Ghastly said. Even spiritualists need a special way to absorb the vitality in the flesh of the otherworldly god. Also, the eye of the one-eyed otherworldly god can increase one's spiritual power. It can be obtained by cooking and eating directly. Ordinary people can obtain it too. Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly walked in the damp passage. Occasionally, there were some demons struggling at death's door. They hid underground and escaped the calamity on the surface. If they were shivering in a corner, Qin Zhao and Aquality Ghastly wouldn't be bothered to deal with them. However, there were some demons who thought they had a bit of strength. Some had grand ideas and thought they could succeed in a sneak attack. Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly basically didn't show any mercy. They directly let them meet their master. Just then, a black figure appeared before Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly. It appeared without any warning. Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly didn't even realize how it had appeared. Chen Zhao looked up. It was the giant black panther, Penigan, whom they'd met in the cave on the mountainside. Penigan, are you going to block our way? Aquality Ghastly narrowed his eyes at Penigan. You should know what happened up there, right? Chen Zhao stood behind. Penigan and Aquality Ghastly knew each other. They seemed to have a close relationship. Penigan hadn't done anything in the cave. Penigan looked at Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly with sparkling eyes. His eyes sparkled as he stared at Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly. Although she had been hiding underground, this did not prevent her from spying on the battle above. She knew how tragic this battle was. Neither of the two people in front of her was a match for her. Chen Zhao was especially terrifying. Even her previous master couldn't fight against him. How do you plan to deal with the Demon Island now? Demon Island belongs to him now, Aquality Ghastly said, pointing at Chen Zhao. If you want to stay, you can only ask him. I will not accept any form of slavery. I'm not interested in enslaving you, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Perhaps Penigan was not weak, but it was just not weak. Her strength should be similar to Kong Mosa's. He also had his own domain. However, in front of Chen Zhao and Aquality Ghastly, it was clearly not enough. Aquality Ghastly glanced at Chen Zhao. They exchanged glances and Chen Zhao nodded slightly. Although the two didn't speak, Chen Zhao roughly understood what Aquality Ghastly meant. He was asking Aquality if he could make the decision. Perhaps he had a good relationship with Penigan. Aquality Ghastly didn't want Chen Zhao to make the decision. After all, if Chen Zhao made the decision, it might be very bad for Penigan. What if you hire me? Hire? The otherworldly god here needs someone to raise and take care of it. Also, some things here need to be guarded, Aquality Ghastly said. There's still a lot of demons left here. They won't be allowed to be released. So for them, they either have to die or be locked up. Do you want to be the warden or the prisoner? Aquality Ghastly said. It wasn't a difficult choice. Pennigan obviously chose the former. Was it a multiple-choice question? It was a mental test, right? Pennigan went to gather the demons who hadn't died. Of course, she also went to suppress the demons who still had other thoughts. After all, Leviathan Abhantegmus had ruled the demon island for 2,000 years. Naturally, there were many loyal confidants, or a demon with ambition. Pennigan had to prove his worth. When Chun Zhao and Aqualati Gasley arrived at Leviathan Abhantegmus Ranch, they saw a huge otherworldly god. The otherworldly god's body hung in the air. Its tentacles were connected to the surrounding stalactites. There was an opening on its lower body. It looked like a reproductive organ. There were many large and small meat eggs around it. Some were several meters long, while others were the size of basketballs. At the same time, there were some baby otherworldly gods that had hatched from the eggs. "This is the mother," Aqualati Gasley said. "It's a pity that dozens of otherworldly gods escaped, but as long as the mother is here, they can escape. The mother can't move. It's already merged with the environment and is the only non-aggressive otherworldly god here." Aqualati Gasley pulled off a larva attached to his arm. The larva was too small, only the size of a palm. Aqualati Gisley threw the baby out, and the other otherworldling gods rushed up in an instant and swallowed their brothers. Do they just eat each other? The mother will lay eggs every once in a while. Each time, it lays thousands of eggs. However, after these thousands of eggs hatch, they will begin to devour each other. In the end, only a few otherworldly gods will survive. From a scientific perspective, this method is very inefficient. It can't be helped. If someone interferes, they can't grow. They start eating by eating their brothers and sisters. Other than their brothers and sisters, what else do they eat? Do they eat humans? Their food list is very wide. They can eat almost anything that humans can eat. Tajimas catches fish from the sea as their food, and they have a very powerful psychic mutation ability. Sometimes the food we throw at them will directly turn into fallen mutants. Look at that turtle-like creature that is clinging to the wall over there. That is already a fallen mutant. Won't the otherworldly god eat the fallen mutants? Yes. When an unusual god matures, it will form its own army of fallen mutants. However, those within this range are all fallen mutants of the Matrix. Although the Matrix won't attack, there won't be any unusual god here that will attack the Matrix and its fallen mutants. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 2552. In some ways, the otherworldly god was truly powerful. He had directly turned the food into a lackey. These fallen mutants need to be cleaned up regularly. If there are too many fallen mutants in the hands of the otherworld god, there is a high chance that they will rebel against the guards here. There are many powerful otherworldly gods here. Can the guards here suppress them? After the death of Leviathan Abarantagemus, his domain had completely vanished. Therefore, Chun Zhao's territory was no longer restricted. He could easily cover most of the farms. Within Chun Zhao's territory, there were a dozen terrifyingly powerful otherworldly gods. On the other hand, the average strength of the devil guards here was very average. Most of them were low-level demons, with 1 or 2 being mid-level demons. Normal guards can't suppress those powerful otherworldly gods, but Pennigan can. And these mature otherworldly gods will be enchanted, the kind of magic that won't kill you, but will make you very uncomfortable. Basically, every demon guard can control the enchantment. If the otherworldly god dares to attack, they can directly activate the enchantment. Although it can't guarantee a certain percentage of safety, it can at least give them some assurance. How long is their breeding cycle? The larval stage lasts for about 2 years. During these 2 years, they will constantly devour each other. When they stop devouring each other, it means that they have entered the growth stage. In fact, they are already edible at this stage, but in terms of size, it would be a waste to eat them at this stage. If there is enough food, This stage will last for about 5 years. If there is not enough food, they will continue to devour each other until they reach the second stage of maturity. This stage will last for about 20 years. According to human standards, they will enter a fully mature body at about 27 years old. However, the older the alien god, the more powerful they will be, and at the same time, the better the quality of food will be. Aquilati Ghastly paused and continued. In terms of economic benefits, the unusual gods of about 50 years old are the most profitable, but there should be a few unusual gods of thousands of years old here. Tegemus has been raising them for a long time, so there's no need to kill them. Every time he needs to, he can cut off a piece of their flesh, then give them food, and they will soon recover. According to Aquilati Gisli's calculations, the total number of otherworldly gods here could provide about 5 otherworldly gods around the age of 50 every year. In fact, according to Aquilati Gisli, raising the otherworldling gods was like most animal husbandry. The better the otherworldling gods were, the higher the returns. If they didn't raise them well, the profits wouldn't be good, and they might even suffer a loss. The otherworldly god was extremely precious. That was why Aquilati Ghastly arranged for Pennigan to be in charge of the breeding and the management of the remaining demons on the island. After all, neither he nor Qin Zhao could stay here. Moreover, Pennigan was definitely more suitable than Chen Zhao and Aquilati Gisli. Are there any of the otherworldly gods that escaped? A few, I guess, but in the past, otherworldly gods often ran away. Chen Zhao had encountered otherworldly gods a few times before, and they seemed to have escaped from Demon Island. After checking the situation of the breeding farm, Chen Zhao and Aquilati Gisli prepared to go to the library. Aquilati, do you know how to use this? Chen Zhao took out the starlight pointer that he'd stolen from Leviathan Aberon Tegmis. Aquilati Gisli raised an eyebrow. You got it? Yes. Aquilati Gisli took the starlight pointer. He tried to input magic power, but there was no reaction. Then he returned it to Qin Zhao. I don't know how to use it either. Maybe there are relevant records in the library. Fine. Qin Zhao put it away in disappointment. The library was built inside the mountain wall. Although the entrance had been destroyed, the internal structure hadn't suffered a destructive blow. Just then, an old demon appeared before Qin Zhao. He was short and shriveled, looking just a bit bigger than an inferior demon. He held a cane and was covered in rough linen. His demonic face was already covered in wrinkles. Qin Zhao glanced at Aquilati Gisli, using his eyes to ask what was going on with this old demon. Your original master is dead, Aquilati Gisli said, pointing at Qin Zhao. Now he's the new master. Hello, master. I'm Gould Padinka, an Awa demon. The Awa demons are very, very weak, but they live longer than most demons, Aquilati Gisli said. This Gould Padinka is almost 5,000 years old. If there are no accidents, he can live for at least another 3,000 years. He's very weak, but he's very familiar with the books here. Time has given him a lot of time to read them. Master, Lord Aquilati, please follow me. Gould Padinka didn't have any intention to resist. To him, it didn't matter who was his master. All he needed to do was to do what he was supposed to do and ensure that his value existed. No one would make things difficult for a weak demon like him. This old demon had lived more clearly than anyone else. After passing through a few hundred meters, the three arrived at the library. The library was a circular space with a diameter of about 100 meters. The bookshelves were also curved and arranged in circles. Do the books here have sacred power? Aquilati Gisli asked. Yes, please follow me. Gould Patinka circled around the bookshelves a few times and took down a book with a metal cover from one of the shelves. The bark was made of gold, black, and red metal. There was also a demon carving on it. This is saint-level power to begin with. Chen Zhao flipped through it. There was a lot of content in the book. He couldn't finish it in a while, so he put it away. Is there nirvana? Qin Zhao asked. Gould Padinka thought for a moment and answered. Yes, please follow me. Then Gould Patinka found a bookshelf and took out a scroll from it. Master, this is Nirvana magic, but it only records the basics of Nirvana magic. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2553. The more basic, the better. Chen Zhao was very satisfied. Are there any books about the Starlight Compass? No, Gould Patinka answered. Chen Zhao was a bit disappointed, but he didn't take it to heart. The Starlight Compass was undoubtedly good stuff, but there was still a long way to go. Chen Zhao wasn't in a rush to get it. To Chen Zhao, this was the icing on the cake. Chen Zhao didn't plan on taking the magic books back. He'd just leave them here. If he needed them, he could come back and get them. Plus, Gould Patinka was watching. He could pick out any book he needed immediately. If he messed up the books, when he brought them back, finding a book would be like finding a needle in a haystack. By the way, did we forget about the 2 pirates? Aqualati Gisli asked, chuckling. I hope they weren't affected. Chen Zhao shrugged. Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli found Cimenta and Hupari in the cave. They were halfway up the mountain and had the cave as cover. Although they were affected, it wasn't fatal. But when Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli stood before them, Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli, they were still terrified. After all, they didn't know how Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli would treat them. In the face of these two, all their tricks became meaningless. Why did Tegmis bring her here? I don't know. Aqualati Gisli shook his head. Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli both stared at Cimenta with scrutinizing eyes. Unfortunately, after studying for a long time, they couldn't find anything on Cimenta. Something that could make Cimenta receive Leviathan Aberrant Tegmis's favor. Of course, it might not be favor either. Forget it. Let's go back. Chen Zhao shook his head. Do you want to go back together? Wasn't that obvious? Staying here to drink the demon's company? The 4 landed on the island and left together. The research ship was full of unclean things. But for Chen Zhao and Aqualati Gisli, it wasn't a big deal. On the way back, Chen Zhao's mind was filled with how to deal with a huge piece of gold. Almost 20,000 tons of gold, which was more than a quarter of the gold circulating in the world. Of course, it was almost impossible to sell this batch of gold at its original price. Moreover, he estimated that it would take at least 20 to 30 years to sort it all out. The amount of gold was simply too huge. Aqualati, what do you plan to do next? I don't have any plans. It's the same as before. Continue to cause trouble? Chen Zhao gave Aqualati Gisli a meaningful look. If that's the case, you'd better leave my territory. After all, if you bring me trouble, maybe we'll break off our relationship next time. I will withdraw all my forces from California. Of course, I might withdraw to even further places. Aqualati Gisli didn't like facing Chen Zhao either. The kind of power was so strong that it made people afraid. He really didn't want to face it, especially as an enemy. By the way, can you sell me some gold? How much are you going to charge? Chen Zhao asked. 20% of the market price. Chen Zhao glanced at Aqualati Gisli silently. Fine, how much do you want? Aqualati Gisli felt that his offer was indeed a bit low. 70% of the market price, Chen Zhao said. Then what's the difference between buying it from the market? This batch of gold had no origin or registration. There was nothing. Under normal circumstances, it couldn't be circulated. If he wanted to circulate this batch of gold in the market, it would require a very complicated process. It was like money laundering. The cost of this process would be reduced by almost 30%. He might even lose money. Aqualati Gisli offered to buy some gold from Chen Zhao. The most fundamental goal was to resell it and earn the difference in price. But if he bought it at 70% of the market price, he might only earn money for Chen Zhao. In that case, he might only earn money for Chen Zhao. He probably wouldn't earn a single cent and would even have to pay for it. Then how much? 40% of the market price. Let's both take a step back, 60%. That's not taking a step back. It should be 50%. 55%. Anything lower than that, Qin Zhao said. Fine. 55% of the market price. I want 20 tons. Only 20 tons? Chen Zhao pursed his lips. 20 tons is already very difficult, Aquilati Gasly said. I can give you low-interest installments, Qin Zhao said. You can hide a bit. Forget it. The price of gold in the market has been very unstable recently. No matter how unstable it is, it won't fall to 55%. No matter what, you won't lose money. If you buy more, you'll have a high chance of making a profit. After all, the American government has to stabilize the price of gold to maintain their purchasing power in dollars. How much interest are you planning to charge? 6% per year. Aquilati Gasly shook his head. No, the interest you're paying is too high. Definitely lower than the banks. That's different. Aquilati Gasly shook his head. You didn't pay anything and you're charging 6% per year. What do you mean I didn't pay anything? I'm giving you more gold. Isn't that paying? For you, it means you didn't pay anything. We all know that it's hard to sell your gold in a short time. When the two bargained, they were no different from normal businessmen. In the end, they agreed on a price. Aquilati Gasly bought 200 tons of gold for $4. For billion. That allowed Aquilati Gasly to increase the purchase volume by 10 times. However, he only paid $400 million in advance, which meant that he still owed Qin Zhao $4 billion. He would pay Qin Zhao in installments over 5 years. The interest Qin Zhao gave Aquilati Gasly was 4% per year. This meant that Aquilati Gasly had to pay Qin Zhao $4, $8 billion in total. Of course, Qin Zhao was actually very willing to give him more gold. Of course, he was also willing to lower the interest and extend the repayment period. However, Aquilati Gasly was more knowledgeable about finance than Qin Zhao. If he extended the repayment period, his income would be further reduced. Qin Zhao considered asking his close friends if they needed some gold as a trump card. To put it bluntly, Qin Zhao's behavior was killing acquaintances. Of course, Qin Zhao could lower their risks appropriately and increase their profits as well. Chapter 2554. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry to get rid of the gold. After all, it was impossible to get rid of such a large amount of gold every few decades. Qin Zhao still cared more about his skills. If he didn't have Neutron Star, Qin Zhao might have really failed. Regardless of whether it was intentional or not, the studio had really helped him a lot this time. This time, they didn't take a boat to the west coast. Instead, they docked at the Charleston port on the east coast, greatly reducing the distance. The whole journey took less than 2 days. Then, they flew back to Los Angeles. Home was indeed the most comfortable. Qin Zhao had been away for a long time this time. Portia, this is for you. Because Qin Zhao wasn't home, she basically had to do all the housework, especially the kids. None of them were easy to deal with. Portia took it and looked. A bag? So heavy. Portia weighed it. Portia glanced at the bag. It was filled with golden beads. Fuck gold. Portia cursed, losing her composure. Qin Zhao stretched his limbs and said calmly, "If you think my gift is vulgar, you can give it back to me." "No, it's not vulgar at all," Portia said, overjoyed. "Boss, why did you suddenly change after one trip?" "No, it's just that I have too much money." Portia glanced at Qin Zhao. Her expression was one of deep disgust. "Portia, do you think there are any places in my house that can be changed to make me look rich?" Portia's expression was lifeless. She'd always hated Qin Zhao, and now she hated him even more. "Boss, anyone who sees your manner will know that you're rich. You don't have to use extra things to pretend. I'm serious. Change all the bowls and chopsticks in your house to gold. That'll make you look really rich." "Good idea." Qin Zhao nodded. Best if you can make a gold car. You don't need to drive it. Just park it in the garage. When people come and see your car, they'll immediately see your collection. Portia looked at Chun Zhao, speechless. Chun Zhao was a bit obsessed. He had an endless amount of gold, but he didn't know how to use it. It was a very painful feeling. So, Chun Zhao was even worse now. Since it couldn't be exchanged for real wealth, it could be used to show off. Portia thought that Chun Zhao's brain had really gone haywire. He actually thought that his rotten idea was good. Chun Zhao picked up the phone. Amira, how are you? Not bad. When are you free? Now. If you're not free right now, we can arrange another day. All right then. If you're free now, come over now. Soon, Amira arrived at Chun Zhao's house. I heard that you've been out recently. Amira asked. Yes, I went to the sea. Chun Zhao nodded. I want to ask you a question. What is it? When I went out to sea this time, I got a batch of gold. It's a bit big. How old? Anyway, there's a lot, Chun Zhao said. So what do you plan to do? Do you want it? Me? If you want to sell it to me, I can only give you 40% of the market price at most. Chun Zhao pursed his lips. Amira was much harder to deal with than Aqualati Gisli. How about I give you a plan? What plan? Mortgage it to the bank, Amira said. What's the difference between that and selling it to you? Of course, if you sell it to me, the profits and losses are all mine. But if you sell it to the bank, my shares in Citibank are less than 2%, and my family only has 6%. So, as long as I don't make any major mistakes, the bank's profits won't have much to do with me. If the bank loses money, you'll lose money too, right? The biggest value of my and my family's shares isn't in the board's dividends, but in keeping it safe. Plus, I won't do anything to harm the bank's interests. Then tell me your plan, Chun Zhao said. When you mortgage the gold to the bank, sign a mortgage agreement with the bank. If you don't pay on time, the gold will automatically belong to the bank. That's actually selling it to the bank, right? Yes, but there's a trick to this kind of mortgage agreement. You can't use less to make up for more. You can only use more to make up for less. Do I need to provide proof of gold production? You just need to provide proof of gold salvaging. You have to pay taxes for the profits from salvaging shipwrecks, right? You have to convert the gold into cash. Wait, can this really work? The tax bureau won't give me any trouble? As long as the reason is legitimate. You can say that I only want to sell it for $1. Who can control how much you sell it for? So, I just need to mortgage it to the bank. Yes, the procedures are a bit complicated, but it's not impossible. You don't have to worry about most of the time. After all, you have your own lawyer. Then how much can I mortgage it for? That depends on how much gold you have. Give me a specific number. 300 tons. How much can I mortgage it for? Chun Zhao asked. Amira's eyes widened. 300 tons? Yes. Chun Zhao nodded. Even Amira, who was used to seeing the world, could not help but gasp. Are you serious? Yes. This is already the total loan for our entire California branch, for a quarter. Can you get a loan? I'll have to report to the other directors about the loan amount that I can give you. You should also contact your lawyer as soon as possible. It's going to be a tough negotiation, Amira said. Amira left in a hurry, so Chun Zhao immediately contacted Alex. Alex, this is the exact situation. 300 tons of gold? Chin, did you wipe out the gold reserves of some countries' banks? Alex, are you sure this can be done? No problem. Tell me your bottom line. You don't need to know what my bottom line is. I'll give you a 3% commission. Chin, are you sure you want to give me a 3% commission? You have to know that 3% is definitely more than $100 million. I've never lied to you before. I understand. Alex nodded. Alex, if this can avoid taxes, does that mean all of my assets can be avoided like this? You're thinking too much. We can only do this time because of the bank's cooperation, because they've received enough benefits. But why should the bank cooperate with you for your other assets? Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2555. Amira also received a reply soon. The negotiation officially started. The dollar was the gold standard. Therefore, American banks had a large amount of gold. The value of gold wasn't just reflected in the market price of $40 per gram. When gold reached a certain level, it could control the value of the currency. This was especially true for top banks like Citibank. 300 tons of gold wasn't just a matter of $10 billion. It could create far more value than that. If it were living things of the same value, Citibank might not even care. But gold was different, especially 300 tons of gold. It could even move the rise and fall of the dollar by 100 times. Citibank could even use this method to control the currency to make profits that were several times the value of the gold itself. Therefore, Chen Zhao's side had the initiative in this negotiation. Chen Zhao also wanted to sell the gold. But Andreas didn't know Chen Zhao's bottom line. Of course, a negotiation that involved $10 billion couldn't be decided with just a few words. Moreover, even the bank couldn't take out $10 billion directly. They also needed to raise cash and even move their reserves. The negotiation for this transaction had been completely handed over to Alex. Chen Zhao only needed to sign at the end. In the past 2 days, Andreas had greeted Chen Zhao more frequently. After all, he was Chen Zhao's financial manager. This meant that he could move more funds. Miss Zhang, is it convenient to talk now? Yes. In fact, the studio was having a meeting right now. They were having a creative meeting. But Chen Zhao was their financial backer. Before their work could generate any economic benefits, Chen Zhao was their bread and butter. Even if it wasn't convenient, it had to be convenient. Due to your hard work, Chen Zhao said, I'm going to give you a bonus. Boss, we've only worked for you for less than a week. It's only a week, but I'm still happy, so I'm still going to give you a bonus. Zhang Ting was about to go crazy. From the start, she'd thought that Chen Zhao wasn't normal. Now, she was even more certain of her thoughts. What kind of boss would give bonuses for no reason? Your ICBC 60 to 22XXXX received 2 million yuan. Boss, how much are you going to give? Didn't you receive 2 million? All of it? Yes, is there a problem? Our studio only has 15 people now. As the manager of the studio, your hard work is worthy of recognition. So you get 500,000 yuan, and the other employees get 100,000 yuan. Boss, the other two are the cleaning auntie and the security guard. What's wrong with the cleaner and the guard? Aren't they human beings? Aren't they employees of our studio? Send them all. Zhang Ting was speechless. Boss, tell me honestly, do you have too much money? Yes. Chen Zhao answered honestly. I got rich again recently. Boss, you're not doing some illegal business. You need our studio to launder money, right? What are you thinking? I just want to show my care for my employees. If you don't want the bonus, then forget it. Why do you have to make it sound so bad? Okay, boss, I was wrong. I plan to invite you to Los Angeles for a week. Everything will be covered. Boss, the studio has reorganized itself. There's still a lot of work, and we're hiring new employees. No rush. You can put these things aside first. You need a good attitude. If you have the same attitude, how can you create good work? So come here and relax. Boss, can we not go? No, Chen Zhao said firmly. What about the new employees? I brought them too. I don't need the money. Zhang Ting should have expected such an answer. What could she say? Ever since Chen Zhao took over the studio, he hadn't done anything serious. Chen Zhao was just like a child giving money away. He found ways to give them money. Logically speaking, this was a good thing. But Zhang Ting was uneasy. After all, she hadn't done anything. She just received Chen Zhao's bonus every day. Boss, when do you plan to go out? The sooner, the better. I've already booked a hotel for you. Why are you in such a hurry? Because I'm passionate. Zhang Ting really wanted to curse. Fuck your passion. 3 days later, Zhang Ting and the studio's employees walked out of the airport with different expressions. She was finally going to meet the rumored nouveau riche boss. Most of the employees had never gone abroad in their lives. This time, it wasn't just the new employees. Even the cleaning lady and the security guard came. At first, Zhang Ting thought that they didn't have passports. In the end, she realized that her worries were completely unnecessary. Hey, over here. Zhang Ting could already see Qin Zhao waving at the airport from afar. There was also a foreign woman beside Qin Zhao. Boss, hello. Zhang Ting walked over and greeted him. I'm here to carry your luggage, Qin Zhao said casually. Let's go. I've arranged a car for you. Let's go to the hotel first. Qin Zhao brought Zhang Ting and the others directly to Del and Risfar's hotel. He had already booked more than a dozen high-class rooms. When Zhang Ting and the others arrived at the entrance, they were shocked by the hotel's extravagance. Boss, how much does it cost for one night? I'm friends with the hotel owner, so there's a discount. As he spoke, Qin Zhao walked to the front desk and helped Zhang Ting and the others check in. Zhang Ting always felt that not only was Qin Zhao a nouveau riche, but he was also crazy and did whatever he wanted. When Qin Zhao brought them to the room, they were shocked again. Zhang Ting had seen the accounts just now. A suite like theirs cost $3,600 per night. Was the boss planning to sell them? It was also a loss-making promotion. Zhang Ting believed that even if they were sold, it wouldn't be enough to cover their expenses. You guys rest in the afternoon. Let's have dinner together. With that, Qin Zhao left. In the evening, Qin Zhao brought them to the hotel restaurant. Looking at the empty restaurant, Zhang Ting knew that her intuition had come true. Qin Zhao had spent on them again. Everyone was a little reserved in front of this rich boss. Come, let's have a drink with the boss, Zhang Ting said. I wish you a good business and a lot of money. Sure, let's have a drink, but I'll just drink juice. I need to drive. I don't want to drive drunk. No one here dared to force him to drink. After drinking the juice, Qin Zhao coughed. Standing up, he said, I have a small request this time. It's what I told you last time. Think of a move for me. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2556. Boss, why do you want us to think of these ideas? Zhang Ting still asked her own question. It was also everyone's question. Qin Zhao seemed to be very focused on this question. I have a friend who wants to make a movie with this theme. I want to see if you can think of a suitable idea. This answer was unreasonable, but at least Zhang Ting and the others could accept it. Anyway, compared to their boss's various ridiculous actions, this was reasonable enough. Boss, doesn't your friend have his own team? Don't worry about that. Just help me think. If you come up with something, I'll give you a bonus. You can do whatever you want in LA. Even if you want to be a star, I'll find them for you. How could this be so crude? Zhang Ting and the others weren't the only ones who thought this way. Qin Zhao thought the same too. He felt like a pimp. Boss, if it's just this, you don't have to drag us all here to boost America's GDP, right? This is serious, Qin Zhao said. It's more efficient to discuss it face to face. Boss, X's settings aren't perfect yet. Do you have a more detailed setting? What don't you know about X? X is an alien? Or superpower? Humans. I guess it's superpower, Qin Zhao said. How about resistance? It's about the same as attack. It can resist the power of a small nuclear explosion at close range. It can resist radiation too? Yes, Qin Zhao said. After all, Qin Zhao could directly endure all kinds of radiation in space. He hadn't tried the radiation damage of a nuclear explosion at close range, but it shouldn't be too far off. Then how does X recover his energy? I mean in battle. He has a rather complicated ability to recover energy. As I said before, X has a domain. He can recover by absorbing the energy in the domain, a fat man said. He can use his fist to compress the air at high speed and then punch it forward to form a small area of high-pressure air. Wasn't this the shadow of a fist? Qin Zhao shook his head. I already have this move. Boss, have you been paying attention to technology recently? Zhang Ting asked. Technology? Does it have anything to do with what we're talking about? Do you know about gravitational waves? I've heard of this term, but I don't know the specifics. To put it simply, it's similar to water waves, but gravitational waves are spatial fluctuations. The collision and fusion of celestial bodies will produce gravitational waves. However, the denser the collision of celestial bodies, the stronger the gravitational waves. Currently, the gravitational waves that humans can detect are from neutron stars and black holes. As for the slightly weaker white dwarfs, they can only be detected at close range. I still don't understand what you are trying to say. X needs about 20 minutes to release neutron star. However, the density of white dwarfs is much lower than neutron stars, so X should be able to create 2 white dwarfs at the same time. Moreover, the efficiency should be much higher than releasing neutron stars. And then, release 2 white dwarfs at the same time and throw them out. Let them collide with each other in their flight paths. Through this collision, it can also create spatial ripples. That's a good idea. The 100,000 is yours, Qin Zhao said readily. It's a good start. Come, keep thinking. Although Zhang Ting said that the skill could be used, it still depended on the effect of actual practice. However, Qin Zhao felt that this skill had a good future. He might be able to use it in a real battle. Zhang Ting didn't know whether she should be happy or not. She'd been with Qin Zhao for 10 days. In the end, she'd gotten back all the money she'd invested in the studio. Boss, if X can compress a white dwarf with one hand, can I compress multiple white dwarfs in front of me without using my hands? This, Zhang Ting's words, opened the door to a new world for Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao wasn't sure that he could do it. However, he could try. Or rather, if he practiced, there seemed to be a high chance that he could do it. I'll give you another 100,000. The other employees in the studio all watched with bloodshot eyes. The second boss was a ruthless person, while the big boss was a werewolf. Boss, can I say something? Just then the cleaning auntie spoke up. Yes, auntie. Boss, do you watch Naruto? You watch? I watch. Boss, do you know about the truth-seeking jade? Well, there are quite a few people in Naruto who can use it, such as Naruto and that. Yeah, I know. Boss said that X can create white dwarfs. It's like a truth-seeking jade. Let X circle a few people around him. When he needs it, he can throw it out. When he doesn't need it, he can keep it by his side. Whoever comes over can use it. Let's see if he can't smash them to death. Auntie, that seems like copyright infringement, Zhang Ting said with a bitter smile. Not really. The copyright isn't a problem. I think it's possible. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin. It was difficult to control, but if he was familiar with it, it seemed to be able to effectively increase his combat power. This was the upgraded version of Zhang Ting's gravitational wave. Auntie, I'll give you 50,000. Keep up the good work. Boss is such a good person. The cleaning auntie was overjoyed. She'd just said a few words, and she'd actually made a lot of money. Auntie, you read comics too? My son does it. I read it when I'm free at work. Plus, our company does comics. I have to conform to our company's culture, right? Makes sense. Qin Zhao glanced at the others. Look, even our cleaning auntie can help me solve my problems. You guys are professionals after all. Then, Qin Zhao looked at the cleaning auntie. Auntie, if you want to buy anything for your family, put it on my tab. Everyone felt pressured. Qin Zhao's words were too direct. After tasting the sweetness, the cleaning auntie also wanted to help Qin Zhao solve his problems. The security guards' eyes were all red. They hated that they hadn't read comics before. Just then, A skinny, four-eyed guy couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and said, "Boss, does X want a way to become stronger?" "What do you think?" "Theoretically, since X can compress air in his domain, can X's domain keep evolving through this training? To put it simply, it's like having X's domain undergo weight training." Huh. Chen Zhao couldn't help but think. All this time he'd only trained himself. He'd never thought about training his domain. However, the skinny guy's words did remind Chen Zhao. Chapter 25:57. Chen Zhao got what he wanted at the dinner. The skinny, four-eyed guy was a graduate who had just graduated from school. Moreover, he majored in fine arts. It wasn't easy to get a job. He had found a job like this. At the time, the skinny four-eyed guy only felt that this manga drawing job was at least compatible with his profession. When he entered the company, his colleagues told him about the boss' strange behavior. The next day, he was told that the company was going to travel abroad. He thought that it had nothing to do with him. In the end, he was dragged onto the plane too. At the time, he didn't think that the studio was rich. He just thought that the company was evil. But as soon as he arrived in Los Angeles, the boss gave him a down payment in a first-tier city before he even spent the money. He was just thinking about it and trying his luck. He didn't think that the boss would really give him a bonus. The others were startled by this. This guy can't be serious, right? Zhang Ting covered her head. She was calculating how much money Chen Zhao had spent on the studio recently. If converted to RMB, it would probably be 7 or 8 million. You guys continue to eat and drink to your heart's content. I won't accompany you guys. I don't want you guys to feel uncomfortable with me here. Zhang Ting, make a list of what they want to do tonight so that I can make arrangements. Got it, boss. After returning home, Chen Zhao and Fei Lai cuddled for an hour. When Fei Lai fell asleep, Chen Zhao sneaked into the river map. First was a white dwarf. Compared to a neutron star, creating a white dwarf wasn't a problem at all. Chen Zhao didn't even need a second to create a white dwarf. To put it simply, the higher the density, the more power he needed. For example, Chen Zhao only needed a second to create 1,000 times the density of air, but he needed 2 seconds to go from 1,000 to 1,500 times. So on and so forth. Time and power were the requirements of a linear ladder. According to the definition of astrophysics, a star with more than a ton per square centimeter could be called a white dwarf. A neutron star, on the other hand, had a density of more than 100 million tons per square centimeter. One could imagine how big the difference was. Of course, the white dwarfs that Chen Zhao could create in a short amount of time had a density that was much higher than the lower limit of a white dwarf, but also much lower than the density of a neutron star. In fact, even if Chen Zhao used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to create an object with a true neutron density. For example, Chen Zhao could create an air balloon with 1,000 times the density of a white dwarf in 1 second. To create a balloon with 2,000 times the density of a white dwarf, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 3,000 times the density, he would need several times the time and energy. To achieve 4,000 times the density, he would need even more time and energy. Chen Zhao's current limit should be around 6,000 times the density of a white dwarf, but he would need almost an hour. There was no battle that could make the enemy wait an hour for Chen Zhao to build up his power. Chen Zhao tried to create 2 white dwarfs with 1,000 times the density with both hands. It wasn't difficult either. It was no different from creating a single white dwarf. The power produced by the collision of 2 white dwarfs that were 1,000 times the size of a white dwarf was also considerable. It was already 1/3 of the power of a neutron star. He had to admit that Zhang Ting's brain was really useful. After all, he relied on his imagination for a living. This move, which she called gravitational wave, had indeed brought a huge breakthrough to Chen Zhao's actual combat. It even allowed Chen Zhao to go from close combat to true long-range combat. While retaining his close combat ability, he now had a long-range attack method. However, if he wanted to go one step further and create a few truth-seeking jades to float around him like the cleaner said it would be very difficult. Without the control of his hands, he would have to compress them with the power of the pocket dimension and control the white dwarf to fly freely. He couldn't do it at all. Chun Zhao fell into deep thought. It seemed that cultivating the pocket dimension was necessary. The skinny, four-eyed guy's training was very simple. He just had to carry weights. In fact, the method he provided was too simple and one-sided. Chun Zhao needed more training. Absolute control of the pocket dimension had to reach the same level as the physical body, or at least close to it. Although the pocket dimension was also an extension of the body, it was more like uncontrollable muscle tissue. It was like the extra fat on one's belly. One could control the rise and fall of one's belly, but one couldn't make it become like one's limbs. If Chun Zhao wanted to achieve the effect of his plan, he had to make the pocket dimension stronger. It was definitely impossible to move it as freely as one's limbs, but it wasn't completely impossible to get close to it. After all, Chun Zhao had a lot of time. The normal method of compressing large amounts of air in the pocket dimension to increase the density of the air in the pocket dimension would be the burden on Chun Zhao's body. How could he train the pocket dimension? He had no other choice but to use it. If he wanted to improve through battles, it was obviously the best choice. But how many battles could he fight against Chun Zhao? So he might as well practice alone and use it again and again. Chun Zhao sat down and looked at the internal alchemy left by Old Turtle. Back then, Old Turtle had left because of his breakthrough. His internal alchemy had also turned into an internal alchemy condensed from immortal power. Therefore, it was much heavier than a sphere of the same volume. This was the difference in density. It was heavier than the densest substance in the world. Chun Zhao tried to lift the immortal power inner core. Of course, he didn't use his hands or any part of his body. He used the power of his realm. But this internal alchemy was too heavy. Think about it. A 10 by 10 by 10 cube of gold weighed 19,320 tons. The density of the internal alchemy was much higher than gold. The diameter of the sphere was almost 40 meters. This internal alchemy weighed 1,000,000 tons. Chun Zhao tried to slowly lift the internal alchemy. He could lift it, but it was far from being able to move it freely. It also couldn't be used as an attack in battle. As for condensing a small ball weighing tens of millions of tons with the help of the small world, Chun Zhao was far from being able to do so. It was impossible. Only now did Chun Zhao realize that he hadn't used and developed the pocket dimension enough. It could even be said that ever since Chun Zhao had comprehended the Shangqin realm, he hadn't actively developed or researched the pocket dimension, let alone trained it. The pocket dimension had expanded from its original diameter of 50 meters to 1,000 meters. But the actual increase was only in the range. It only increased his immortal power storage, recovery speed, and sensing range. His actual combat power didn't increase at all. Chapter 2558. Chun Zhao realized that his development of the pocket dimension was still very low. No, he hadn't developed it at all. The pocket dimension was filled with meridians that only Chun Zhao could see. They were the meridians of the world, heavenly patterns. Chun Zhao had discussed this with Old Turtle before. As someone with experience, Old Turtle felt that heavenly patterns were the meridians of the world. These meridians were like human meridians. The spiritual qi of the world flowed in these meridians. Chun Zhao suddenly thought of a question. Heavenly patterns were the meridians of the world. Could heavenly patterns be strengthened like one's meridians? But how could one strengthen heavenly patterns? Chun Zhao didn't have a clue right now. Heavenly patterns weren't something tangible. They couldn't be touched or sensed. Only one could see the heavenly patterns that formed one's pocket dimension, using the pocket dimension as a human's body. Now, heavenly patterns were one's meridians. In the past, one's body was in direct contact with the meridians of the world to breathe and absorb the spiritual qi of the world. Now it was in contact with heavenly patterns, so the range of contact with the world was wider. From this angle, it could be confirmed that heavenly patterns were like human meridians. So, how could one strengthen their meridians? Evolving one's own body was one way. Tempering in the process of cultivation was also a way. Heavenly patterns couldn't be destroyed. All attacks were ineffective. It was the same logic as how no matter how powerful a person was, they couldn't destroy someone else's territory. Being unbreakable often meant that it couldn't be changed. If it couldn't be changed, then the strengthening that Chen Zhao wanted couldn't be discussed. Chen Zhao suddenly wondered if he could use Nirvana's flame to temper heavenly patterns. Nirvana's flame probably couldn't either. Just then, Chen Zhao thought of something. The handsome young man had once taught him a spell. He could use his own pocket dimension to swallow an unstable pocket dimension. When he'd fought Kong Mosa, Chen Zhao had used this move to take away Kong Mosa's pocket dimension. If there was someone among the people he knew who could change a pocket dimension, Chen Zhao believed that it had to be the handsome young man. Chen Zhao recalled the content of the spell. In a way, it was a spell that could change a pocket dimension. However, it could only take away an unstable pocket dimension like Kong Mosa's. Kong Mosa's pocket dimension was attached to his demon army. The spell that the handsome boy gave him was not complicated at all. However, it would be too difficult for Chen Zhao to decipher the contents of the heavenly pattern. Moreover, it was even more difficult to deduce a suitable circulation method for oneself from this content. Chen Zhao wrote down the content of the spell and started analyzing it paragraph by sentence. "Hello, handsome boy. What is it? Remember when you gave me a spell that could devour other people's domains? I remember. Why? Is there something wrong with the spell? No, I've made some changes recently. I want you to take a look and see if there are any problems." The handsome young man received Chen Zhao's message. With just a glance, he had already understood the summary of the content. "Tell me why you changed your magic. My goal was to strengthen and train my domain, but then I discovered a problem. I couldn't make any fundamental changes to my domain, so my training became meaningless. In fact, this principle was the same as the gym. If a person went to the gym, his original intention was to strengthen his body. But if his training in the gym only made him more familiar with the equipment, his body wouldn't change at all. His body did not change at all, so this training method was definitely wrong. What do you think of my changes? It's a big problem." "A big problem? What's the problem? Think about it yourself. I'll only help you identify if there's a problem," the handsome young man said. "Why? Tell me about it. You're not weak. In hell, you're a lord, so you should think about it yourself. It's good for you too. Sigh. I really don't like exchanging thoughts with masters like you. Every time I get to the point, I'll think about it myself." Chen Zhao sighed. "You should learn to think. I can think, but it's not my strong suit." "Then make it your strong suit. Okay, let's talk about something pleasant. Do you have anything pleasant to share with me? I killed a demon recently and stole a lot of gold from him. Oh, he also raised many unusual gods. Do you want some? I'll bring some for you next time I go to hell." "Oh, unusual gods? In hell, only Beelzebub has a lot of them. Also, Samuel seems to have some too. Do you have a mother?" "Yes," the handsome young man said. "If the mother gives birth to a special egg next time, pick the smallest 10 and give them to me." "Why? Don't tell me you're too embarrassed to ask for the big ones. Anyway, the mother is good at giving birth. It doesn't matter if you have a few big ones." The handsome young man shook his head. When the mother breeds the special egg, it won't provide too much nutrients to the mother's egg, so the small eggs that are born are very likely to be the mother's egg. If you want to raise a new mother, you can only find it from the small eggs. By the way, the last time I went there, I saw a lot of eggs that haven't hatched yet. The mother probably just laid eggs. I'll get the people in charge of cloning and breeding to pick up those small eggs. I'll send them to you in a few days. Okay, Also, I bought a studio, so they help me think of a few of my skills. Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you think I'm being opportunistic when other people help me think? I ask you questions, but you want me to think for myself? That's what you want to say when you talk to me about the people you bought, right? What do you mean by bought? They're just working for me. Don't avoid the question. They're not in the same field as you. It's very common for you to broaden your horizons and gain enlightenment from people in other fields. They can't give you guidance, but more possibilities. As for me, if I were to tell you, I would only tell you one path and you'd lose more possibilities. Chun Zhao sounded disdainful, but he remembered the handsome young man's words. But your studio also gave me an interesting enlightenment, the handsome young man said. Help me thank them. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 2559. It's too insincere to let others thank you for me. Are you sure you want me to thank them personally? I'll drag their souls to hell. I'm just kidding. I'm happy to help you. Qin Zhao walked out and lay in the yard, gazing at the starry sky. Do you know that star? No. What's so special about it? In China, that star is called Chang'e or Taibai. In the West, it's called Venus or Morning Star. It's also a star that represents you. Represents me? Yes, Morning Star Lucifer, the brightest angel. I still prefer another name, Satan. Then do you like little Sa, or handsome? Why does it have to be a little? It makes it seem like we're close. Then should I call you little Chen Zhao? No. In Chinese, you can't add a little in front of your name because it lowers your seniority. If you're my senior, you can call me that. You have to understand the difference between a nickname and a name. I don't understand. You can give me a little, but why can't I? If you want to give me a little, you have to have a nickname first and then a little. That'll make it seem more intimate. Nickname? You're human. Can I call you little man? Why do I feel like you're scolding me? Whatever. I'll go ask some Asians later. The handsome guy paused and asked, Oh, what experience do you have with raising and educating children? Chen Zhao stared at him as if he'd seen a ghost. Are you seriously discussing this with me? Yes. You have a child? Who did you have it with? Did you forget? The handsome guy said. When we first met, we made a deal. I took a perfect angelic crystal from you. You're saying that angelic crystals can give birth to angels. You can't, but I can, the handsome guy said emotionlessly. Let your child avoid all the dangers you can think of and give him absolute protection. Chen Zhao started talking about parenting with the handsome guy. However, the child still needs to establish his own social network. Regardless of his identity, he needs to come into contact with other demons, either as an enemy or a friend. That's exactly what I'm worried about. If I let her acknowledge hell, then one day she'll hate her own identity. But if I let her acknowledge her own identity, then one day she'll hate hell and even escape from it. That's easy, Qin Zhao said. Build your own school and instill your ideas into your children through education. But you should think about what you want to instill in your children first. The handsome boy thought for a moment and said, I have no experience in this area. I have no experience either. Qin Zhao shrugged helplessly, but there are professionals in the human world. You're not asking me to send a few teachers to hell, are you? This kind of thing goes against my principles. No, I just need to conform to my child's ideals. In other words, you only want educational content, right? Yes. Zhang Ting stood on the balcony, enjoying the holiday breeze and the faint smell of the sea. Hotel suites rarely came with balconies. One had to admit that the location of this hotel was too good. It could watch the wind and the sea. In front was the sea and behind was the downtown area. It could be quiet or moving. There was also a beach that belonged to the hotel, which directly increased the comfort of the hotel. Just then, Zhang Ting's phone rang. Zhang Ting, my yacht is already parked at the entrance of the hotel. You can come down when you're ready. Everyone is going out to play today. If you're ready, come to the pier in front of the hotel. Got it, boss. After hanging up, Zhang Ting said to her assistant, Go tell the others that the boss is waiting for us at the pier. Don't let him wait too long and leave a bad impression. Oh, got it. The assistant skipped out. The ratio of men to women in the studio was pretty balanced, but some of the girls in the studio were still in bed when they received the notice. This made them very smart. On one hand, they wanted to show off their beauty in front of the boss. On the other hand, time was too tight, so they didn't want to be late. Chen Zhao was dressed rather casually today. He was wearing colorful casual clothes and a sun hat. A few girls stared at Chen Zhao with shining eyes, as if they wanted to catch a rich husband. Boss, sorry for making you wait so long. It's fine, Chen Zhao said casually. We're all out to play. Don't do office stuff. Let's go on the yacht. Zhang Ting nodded. Her impression of Chen Zhao improved. She didn't really like Chen Zhao's nouveau riche style, but Chen Zhao's personality wasn't bad. However, Chen Zhao wasn't a bad person. He never put on airs in front of them. Boss, where's the yacht you prepared? This one. Chen Zhao pointed behind him at the Hydra docked behind him. This one. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The yacht was too big. Boss, it's too big. We don't even have 20 people. We don't need such a big yacht, right? It costs 200,000 to 300,000 a day to rent, right? No, it's mine, Chen Zhao said casually. Let's go. Everyone had a new understanding of Chen Zhao's wealth. After boarding the ship, everyone was like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. Even Zhang Ting, who was from an upper-class family, was shocked by how luxurious the yacht was. The yacht itself was full of technology. It also had all the functions. As long as they had all the resources, even celebrating the new year on the yacht would be exciting. Chen Zhao pulled over a folding chair and leaned against the swimming pool on the top floor. By then, the guys and girls in the studio had all changed. Some of the more conservative ones still wore traditional swimsuits. 3 girls were bolder and wore bikinis which were very eye-catching. Zhang Ting also changed into a bikini, but her upper body was still covered with a large white shirt. Zhang Ting brought Chen Zhao a glass of wine. Not bad. Did you make it? When I was studying in England, I worked part-time as a bartender. What did you study when you were studying abroad? Astrophysics is looking at outer space with a telescope every day. This is way too different from the industry you're working in now, right? What I learned in the past was for my family. What I'm doing now is my own hobby. Zhang Ting said, What about you? I studied medicine. You quit medicine and went into business? No, I'm also a medical professor at UCLA. Chapter 2560. Zhang Ting was completely stunned. This man who looked like a nouveau riche was actually a university professor? Just then, 2 bold girls walked over. Boss, come and play with us. With that, they pulled Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Why did that sound so awkward? However, the 2 girls weren't embarrassed because they said something wrong at all. They kept pushing Chen Zhao into the pool. Chen Zhao didn't want to spoil everyone's fun, so he cooperated. After half an hour, Chen Zhao said that he was tired again and wanted to rest. Zhang Ting sat cross-legged on the cushion. Seeing Chen Zhao walk over, she pinched her lower lip and whistled. Your body is really good. I think you're really a good stock. You're rich, educated, and have such a great body. 80 points. Why only 80? Shouldn't it be 100 points? You're not handsome enough. Chen Zhao's mouth twitched. You don't like being intimate with strangers, right? Zhang Ting asked. Zhang Ting could tell that Chen Zhao was in agreement with her employees. It's okay. Chen Zhao didn't admit it directly. How about it? Think about the girls in our studio. They're all good. Their education, personality, and looks are all good. I'm married. I'm the father of 2 children. Really? What a pity. Zhang Ting wasn't too surprised. In fact, She'd noticed that there were children's toys around Chen Zhao a few times during their video calls. She'd already guessed it. Now, it was just to confirm her guess. Master, a call for you. Miss Alex is calling. Connect to my Bluetooth headset. Chen Zhao put it on. Alex, what's up? My team and the bank have already agreed, Alex said. The bank will buy it at $32. 75 per gram, which is 83. 21% of the current market price. It's done so quickly. Chen Zhao was surprised. He'd thought that this negotiation would be a long battle. A month or two would be considered a short one. It wouldn't be surprising if it lasted half a year or even a year. The international gold price has been rising recently. If it doesn't fall, the longer it drags on, the higher the price they'll have to pay. Maybe it will fall tomorrow. About 5 days ago, a mudslide occurred in a Brazilian gold mine, causing hundreds of people to be buried. Now, the government has temporarily blocked the situation and is demanding $8 billion in compensation and fines from the mining company. That gold mine is currently ranked 4th in the world, and its annual production accounts for 9% of the world's total production. So before this matter is resolved, the price of gold will not fall. In other words, I got lucky, right? You could say that. Alex also laughed. Based on the 3% commission, this mission would bring her close to $300 million in income. This price is much higher than I thought. I thought it would be around 60% of the market price at most. It's very simple. I've also contacted other banks. This country doesn't have anything else, but there are plenty of banks. Moreover, it's not just the banks who can afford this batch of gold. There are also many rich people who can afford this batch of gold. 83% of the market price is already a huge profit for them. If it weren't for the fact that you don't have a clear proof of production, people would fight to buy it even if it's 105% of the market price. Alex didn't ask too much about the origin of the gold. Since Chen Zhao didn't tell her clearly, it was probably the kind of gold that came from illegal sources. However, she knew what her duty was. When do we sign the contract? Tomorrow morning, if possible. As long as it's morning? Of course. They really want to communicate with you. But I know you won't be interested. I'll leave this to you, Chen Zhao said. Then we'll talk tomorrow. After hanging up, Zhang Ting glanced at Chen Zhao. Boss, if you're busy, you can go back now. No, but I have a contract to sign tomorrow morning, so you guys can do whatever you want in the morning. I'll arrange other projects for you in the afternoon. Boss, we have our hands and feet. We don't need you to accompany us all the time. In my first month in LA, I encountered 2 shootings. One of them was when I was held hostage by the gunman, Chen Zhao said. Since I brought you guys out, I have to ensure your safety. Boss, you're so rich. I think we'll be in more danger if you stay with us. After all, if the kidnappers want to kidnap you, they might hurt us accidentally. That's why I need to find a few scapegoats, Chen Zhao said, smiling. Just then, a few guys ran over. Boss, I see that you have diving equipment. Can we go in? The water here is deep and you don't have a diving license, so you can't go in here. Also, without a professional coach, you can't go in alone. When the boat reaches the shallow water, I'll bring you in. Boss, do you have a diving license? I have an athlete diving license. When they reached the shallow water, Chen Zhao brought 4 guys and 1 girl into the water. In fact, this area was near Chen Zhao's moon coast. It was also Chen Zhao's private property. These otakus had never dived before. At first, they were very excited. But when they really went into the water, they were afraid and didn't dare to go in. Nevertheless, under Chen Zhao's guidance, they still went in. Zhang Ting had been worried that Chen Zhao didn't prepare well since he brought them overseas in such a hurry. Only now did she realize that her worries were unnecessary. From the moment they got off the plane, from the moment they got on the plane, they received the best trip. When they reached the shore, each of them held a giant clam of various sizes. This one's too small. Throw it back into the sea. Chun Zhao glanced at the giant clam in the skinny four-eyed guy's hand. Such a small giant clam could only be considered a larva. They couldn't be eaten even if they were fished up. It was a complete waste. We'll eat this for lunch. Also, who knows how to cook? There are still ingredients in the kitchen. Go make a few national dishes. I haven't eaten national dishes in a long time. I'll go. Which local flavor do you like? Zhang Ting asked. Anything is fine, but I like Sichuan and Hunan. After lunch, Qin Zhao thought that they would still make a fuss. In the end, they all seemed to be drained of energy. They just sit in front of the computer every day and don't exercise much, Zhang Ting said, speechless. Now that they're suddenly active, they're all shriveled up. This is so embarrassing. Then after we return, Qin Zhao said, get each of them a gym card so that they don't forget to exercise outside of work. 9 heavens, Divine King,